Chapter 584. Yujie moved quickly, blocked Shuqi's hand, and gave her a hard push. Shuqi almost lost her balance and took a few steps back before she could stand still. When she stood still, she was so angry that her face turned livid. When she was about to step forward and argue with Yujie again, she saw Xiao Yenru waving her hand. Then she stood behind Xiao Yenru angrily and glared at Yujie. "Fifth sister, you should teach this servant girl well. We are a family. There are some things that should be said and some things that shouldn't be said. If she says something that shouldn't be said, it will be a small matter if she loses her life, but if she implicates her master, it will be a big matter." Xiao Yenru's face was a little tense, and her eyes became cold. Xiao Wanru bowed sideways to her and said insincerely, "Big sister, you are right. After going back, I will discipline her more, lest she offends someone next time." Her words sounded soft, but there was a hidden needle in them. Xiao Yenru wanted to give Xiao Wanru a hard time, but it was inconvenient for her to do so in front of Chu Qing and Qiu Yu. She had always liked to show a dignified and gentle look in front of others. "Fifth miss, she is obviously talking nonsense and gossiping about her master. If we were in the mansion, we would have directly beaten her to death." Shuqi was unwilling to let Yujie go so easily. She stretched out her hand, pointed at Yujie, and said loudly, "You are just a servant girl. How dare you scold my servant like this?" Xiao Wanru looked up at Xiao Yenru calmly. Although there was still a smile on her face, it was a little cold. "Is this the rule of big sister and the rule of our mansion?" Yujie's words were indeed a little too much, almost exposing Xiao Yenru's dignity. As a servant, she naturally had to be punished. Xiao Wanru also said that she would discipline Yujie well, which could be regarded as giving Xiao Yenru face to a certain extent. But now Xiao Yenru's servant girl was also presumptuous. She even threatened Xiao Yenru in front of her. Xiao Wanru hinted that Xiao Yenru was talking about rules on the surface, but in fact, the rules were for others. The people around her were extremely unruly. If they said this in private, Xiao Yenru wouldn't care. But now there were two outsiders here. She was so angry that her face and neck became thick. However, she had always been able to bear it. She clenched her fists hard and then slowly relaxed them. "Shuqi, apologize to Miss Wu." "First miss, I." Shuqi was not convinced. It was obviously Yujie who picked on her. "Hurry up," Xiao Yenru said with a cold face. Shuqi did not dare to disobey. She knelt down in front of Xiao Wanru with a plop, gnashed her teeth and said, "Fifth miss, I went overboard just now. Please forgive me." "Get up," Xiao Wanru said lightly. Shuqi stood up angrily, stood behind Xiao Yenru, and waited for Yujie to apologize. After she apologized, it would be Yujie's turn to apologize to her master. "Eldest sister, just now, my servant girl was a little too direct, but her words were wrong, but the truth is the same. Eldest sister didn't listen to a single word I said, but when Lord Chiu asked you to take off my shoes, you heard it very clearly. Scholars say that a doctor should not be punished. Even though I'm not a doctor in ancient times, I'm still a legitimate daughter of an aristocratic family. Eldest sister, you want me to take off my shoes for such a small matter. What is your intention?" Xiao Wanru looked at Xiao Yenru with a smile on her face, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Her beautiful eyes were as clear as water, and she slowly glanced at the people present. Even though Qiu Yu admired Xiao Yenru, he couldn't help but feel suffocated when Xiao Wanru's beautiful watery eyes glanced at him. After hearing Xiao Wanru's words clearly, he also felt guilty. He just wanted to help Xiao Yenru by taking off her shoes and checking them. As soon as Xiao Wanru said that, Xiao Yenru knew that she was indeed a little too anxious just now and let Xiao Wanru take the lead. This matter was originally a trifle. It was just two rough old maids from the countryside. It was wrong for her to doubt Xiao Wanru's words for the sake of two rough old maids. What was more, Xiao Wanru took off her shoes to prove her innocence. Xiao Yenru took a deep breath and bowed deeply to Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru turned sideways politely to avoid it. In the eyes of others, Xiao Yenru was, after all, a sister with an excellent reputation. Fifth sister, I was wrong about this matter. Just now, I was in a mess because of my concern. I thought that I couldn't let Lord Qiu frame you unjustly, but I didn't think of other things. Please forgive me, fifth sister. Xiao Yenru apologized to Xiao Wanru very sincerely. Chu Qing looked at Xiao Wanru calmly and then at Xiao Yenru. Xiao Yenru looked really graceful. Compared with her fifth sister, Xiao Yenru was very considerate and behaved like a legal wife. If he could marry Xiao Yenru, it would be a very good thing. As for the fifth Miss Xiao, she was a little sharp and unforgiving, so she was not easy to get along with. If he married her as his legal wife, he was afraid that he would not be able to take other concubines in the future. He was not powerful enough now, so it was not good for him to marry only one wife. He had to choose a few more concubines in order to get in touch with the officials in the imperial court. In comparison, Xiao Yenru was naturally better than Xiao Wanru. Moreover, Xiao Yenru was the top beauty in the capital city. With this title, it was the most worthwhile to marry her. Although her eyes were not as good as the fifth Miss of the Xiao's mansion, her overall appearance should be better than that of the fifth Mississippi. Otherwise, why hadn't he heard of the fifth Miss? It was said that the first Miss Xiao was both talented and beautiful. With this in mind, he immediately made a decision. He smiled and changed the topic. Since it's a misunderstanding, let's just talk about it. Whether it's the first Miss or the fifth Miss, they're not narrow-minded people. This matter is over. Lord Qiu, how do you think we should handle this matter? Chu Qing helped her out with a smile and pushed the topic back to Qiu Yu. Xiao Yenru smiled softly at Chu Qing and looked very grateful. Chu Qing responded with a faint and gentle smile. The quiet interaction between the two of them made Qiu Yu's face darken, because Xiao Yenru's maid and Xiao Wanru's maid almost quarreled because of his words just now. He felt extremely guilty, but now his guilt turned into anger. However, he knew that he couldn't force them anymore at this time. He had no right to ask Xiao Wanru to take off her shoes to check. Since the fifth Miss is unwilling to do it, forget it. If this case is really small, it may be sent to the capital governor, Qiu Yu said in a low mood. He felt that he had been embarrassed by Xiao Wanru and lost face in front of the beauty he liked, so that Chu Qing could gain favor in front of Xiao Yenru. After saying that, he cupped his hands to Xiao Yenru and said, "First Miss Xiao, I'll go to deal with this matter first." "Thank you, Lord Qiu. If there's anything, please tell me." Xiao Yenru said softly. "Okay, I'll definitely tell the first Miss if there's anything." Seeing that Xiao Yenru's attention was on him again, Qiu Yu looked better. Thinking that he might be able to take advantage of this matter to meet the first Miss Xiao a few more times, he immediately felt that it was better to leave this matter in his hands. "Thank you, Lord Qiu." Xiao Wanru also bowed sideways, narrowed her watery eyes slightly, and looked at Qiu Yu's face. She had seen the change of Qiu Yu's face just now. Looking at Xiao Yenru's calm look, her eyes became deep. It seemed that Xiao Yenru had also made up her mind. Qiu Yu said goodbye to Chu Qing again, turned around, and strode away. "First Miss Xiao, fifth Miss Xiao, shall we go back together now or enjoy the scenery?" Chu Qing said. Although he said this to the two sisters, his gentle eyes fell on Xiao Yenru. Obviously, he really wanted to ask Xiao Yenru for her opinion. "What do you think, fifth sister?" Xiao Yenru thought for a while and looked uncertain. "Big sister and Commandery Prince Qing, you'd better go shopping. I want to stay here and pick some beautiful maple leaves to take back." Xiao Wanru shook her head and refused. "How can I rest assured to leave you here alone?" Xiao Yenru said softly. She frowned and looked at Xiao Wanru with concern. "Big sister, I'm fine. I was fine when you asked me to stay here just now. How could I be fine now? I've gotten much better." Xiao Yenru gently raised her leg and said with a smile, "If you don't believe me, why don't I remove it and show it to you?" When Xiao Wanru was seriously injured just now, Xiao Yanru could leave with others. At this time, it was a little unreasonable to use this as an excuse. Xiao Wanru sneered in her heart. She knew Xiao Yanru's mind very well. On the one hand, she had an ambiguous relationship with Chu Qing, but on the other hand, she was unwilling to get too close to Chu Qing. After all, the possibility of Chu Qing getting the position was almost zero. In this case, it was impossible for Xiao Yanru to waste more energy on Chu Qing. Moreover, Qiu Yu was here before. If someone asked about it in the future, she could explain it clearly. But now there were only the two of them. However, since Xiao Yanru didn't use this excuse before, she wouldn't allow her to use it now. She glanced at Chu Qing, who was standing aside, and said with a smile, "Commandery Prince Qing, take my big sister around. I should be nearby and can't go far. First miss, the scenery here is really good. Let's go for a walk. If you're tired later, you can come back." Chu Qing, of course, couldn't ask for more, so he said with a smile. Hearing their words, Xiao Yanru couldn't really refuse them even though she was full of displeasure. She could only show some concern on her face and said, "Fifth sister, don't go far. I'll come back after a short walk. Just wait for me." "Okay." Xiao Wanru said with a smile and then watched Chu Qing lead Xiao Yanru to a deep path. It was a small road with branches, which looked much smaller than the main road they had taken before. With Qiu Yu's presence before, they had walked on the main road. Now, was he going to make the atmosphere between them more pleasant? She raised the corners of her mouth slightly. If Xiao Yanru were so easy to deceive, she wouldn't have won the title of being both talented and beautiful. As expected, after taking a few steps, the two of them turned back with their servants and maids, and then walked on the main road again. They turned back and took the road they had taken before. Obviously, Xiao Yanru didn't want to get too close to Chu Qing and Chu Qing, lest Chu Luiyue would be jealous. After seeing their backs disappear from her sight, Xiao Wanru continued what she had done before. She really wanted to pick some beautiful and intact maple leaves. If she remembered correctly, there would be a major event that required these maple leaves. Chapter 585. It didn't take long for Xiao Wanru to get tired. Her feet were not fully recovered, so she couldn't squat for a long time. Yujie helped her to a pavilion and let her rest against the fence. She went around the pavilion to pick up maple leaves for Xiao Wanru. The maple forest was very big. They walked all the way forward and almost didn't meet anyone. But after they stopped, they saw waves of people coming in. The incense in the Yuhui nunnery was very popular, and this maple forest was just open to people for the first time. Moreover, it was the best time to enjoy the autumn scenery. Most of them were women, but some of them came with their sisters or elders occasionally. Seeing that there was only Xiao Wanru in the pavilion, no man came in rudely. However, when they passed by, they all peeped at the pavilion secretly. Even if the woman in the pavilion was wearing a veil, her profile was attractive. Two nuns ran in a hurry. One was Huiding Nun, who followed Mingxiu Nun, and the other was Huikong, a supervisor disciple of the master of the Yuhui nunnery. Unexpectedly, Huiding Nun brought her here, which was a surprise. As the disciple of the master of the Yuhui nunnery, Huikong was a shrewd and capable figure among the disciples of the master of the Yuhui nunnery. She knew that Mingxiu Nun was treating Prince Chen, so Huikong was very close to Mingxiu Nun's branch. In the past, she was also very good to Mingxiu Nun's branch. This time, she should be in Mingxiu Nun's branch. "Fifth miss, did you hurt your foot?" Seeing Xiao Wanru in the pavilion, Huiding Nun hurriedly took a few steps forward and bowed to her. Yujie, who was picking up maple leaves, saw them and hurriedly came back to stand behind Xiao Wanru. "My miss sprained her foot. I have just treated it for her and bandaged it, but I don't know how it is," Yujie said. "Fifth miss, can I have a look at your foot?" Huiding Nun asked. Xiao Wanru looked around uneasily. Although the pavilion was on the side of the road, if someone passed by, they would definitely see the people in the pavilion. Fifth miss, if you don't treat your foot early, I'm afraid that something serious will happen. Senior Sister Huiding is learning medicine from Mingqiu Nun. After she treats your foot, you can rest assured. Concealing an illness for fear of treatment is easy to make a big deal. Although there may be people coming here, no one will see it with me and your servant girl. Huikong Nun was a smart person. As soon as she saw Xiao Wanru's look, she knew what she was worried about, so she hurriedly said with a smile. Since she said so, Xiao Wanru could not refuse her and nodded at once. Huikong Nun and Yujie stood in front of her feet. Huiding Nun squatted down, lifted Xiao Wanru's feet, took off her shoes, and then untied the circles of white cloth wrapped around them. In order to dispel Xiao Wanru's nervousness, Huiding Nun asked while untying the bandage, Fifth miss, where did you get this white cloth? It doesn't look like a revolving door is used for bandaging. With one look, one could tell where the white cloth was torn from. It was very irregular. It's from my body. I was going to bandage it for you just now, but there was no cloth, so I tore it from my body. Yujie reached out and slightly lifted her skirt to let others see that there was indeed a piece of cloth missing under her inner skirt. Huiding Nun and Huikong Nun just glanced at it casually. Originally, they asked in order to dispel Xiao Wanru's nervousness, so no one took it seriously. After the long cloth was untied, Huiding Nun saw the swollen foot below. Even Huikong Nun felt very painful. Originally, she thought that such a delicate miss just twisted a little and would be fine. She didn't expect that it was really so serious that her ankle was swollen like a steamed bun. Huiding Nun reached out and gently pinched Xiao Wanru. While pinching, she asked Xiao Wanru where it hurt and sometimes increased her strength. Xiao Wanru's forehead was covered with a layer of cold sweat because of the pain. Fifth miss, your servant girl is good. She has already fixed it for you, but you still have to rest more in the future. I'm afraid you have to lie in bed for a period of time, otherwise you may really hurt your muscles and bones. Huiding Nun comforted Xiao Wanru in a soft voice. Xiao Wanru's foot had been covered with ointment. After she pressed it with her fingers, some of it got on her hands. Huiding Nun put it under her nose and sniffed it. She nodded again and said, This ointment is very good. Is it from the palace? It's from the palace. First miss gave it to our miss before. Yujie explained. With the status of Duke Xing's mansion, they naturally had this kind of ointment awarded by the palace. Very good. Then I won't prescribe other ointment for 5th Mississippi. Just apply this ointment twice a day, in the morning and at night. After that, you have to lie in bed and don't walk anymore. At least you have to. Huiding Nun thought for a while and added some days, you have to rest for at least a few days before you can fully recover. Yes, 5th Miss should have a good rest. Huikong Nun also nodded repeatedly. Xiao Wanru's injury was really serious. Although her bones were not hurt, Huikong Nun felt that she would definitely not recover without a good rest for a period of time. If it were her, she might say that she needed to rest for a few months. Thank you, nuns. Xiao Wanru thanked them. Huiding Nun helped her wrap up the bandage again, then tied it up and put on her shoes. Fortunately, the swollen parts were basically on her ankles. Although her feet were also a little swollen, it did not prevent her from putting on her shoes. However, when she put on her shoes, Huiding Nun did not put them on properly. Huiding Nun stood up and took the handkerchief presented by Yujie. She told her, 5th Miss, you'd better not put on all your shoes. This will squeeze the wound. Just walk for a while. If it's inconvenient, you can walk slowly. Thank you, Nun. I got it. Xiao Wanru stood up with the help of Yujie and walked a little. It was indeed uncomfortable without putting on her shoes, but it was okay in general. Miss, let's go back now. Do you still want to wait here for the first miss to come back? Yujie suggested. Xiao Wanru hesitated for a moment and looked at the intersection. Xiao Yenru had not come out yet. Is the 5th miss waiting for the first Miss Xiao? Huikong Nun asked and also looked at the intersection. She also heard that the two misses of Duke Xing's mansion went to the maple forest together today, but why were they not together? The first miss and Commandery Prince Qing have gone in to enjoy the scenery for a while. Why haven't they come back yet? Xiao Wanru nodded and said helplessly. Fifth miss, you go back first. I'll stay here for you. When I see the first miss, I'll tell her that you have gone back to rest. Hui Kong volunteered. It was said that the first Miss Xiao was talented and beautiful. No one knew what kind of rich family she would marry in the future. Hui Kong felt that if she could leave a good impression on the first Miss Xiao before she got married, she would definitely get more benefits in the future. The first Miss Xiao's future was limitless. Then, I'll have to trouble you, Nun. Although Xiao Wanru hesitated, she nodded after moving her feet. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I have nothing to do now. I'll just wait for the first miss to come and send a message. Hui Kong Nun said with a smile. Since it was settled, Xiao Wanru held Yujia's hand, followed Hui Kong Nun and walked slowly to the maple forest. Hui Kong Nun continued to stay here. She sat alone in the pavilion and waited. She was not in a hurry. The scenery here was good. Even as the disciple of the master of Yuhui Nunnery, she could not come in to enjoy the scenery. It was rare for her to enjoy the scenery, so she was in a good mood. Xiao Yenru and Chu Qing appeared after she waited for more than an hour. Seeing Hui Kong Nun in the pavilion, Xiao Yenru was stunned. Hui Kong Nun also saw Xiao Yenru and Commandery Prince Qing and came up to them with a smile. She bowed to Commandery Prince Qing first, and then bowed deeply to Xiao Yenru and said, First Miss, the fifth Miss has gone back to rest because of her serious foot injury. She asked me to wait here and tell you when you and Commandery Prince Qing come back from enjoying the scenery, so that you won't be anxious. Huikong's words were extremely gentle and polite, but Xiao Yenru's face changed greatly when she heard it. She took 2 steps aside and kept a distance from Chu Qing. Didn't the fifth sister say that she would wait for me here just now? She said that she didn't feel well and didn't want to walk, so she asked Commandery Prince Qing and me to have a rest. Why did she become so powerful in such a short time? Xiao Yenru said with a frown. Xiao Wanru's repeated words made her increasingly feel that Xiao Wanru was pretending. She also knew Huikong in front of her. She was very smart and could be considered one of the top nuns in the Yuhui nunnery. However, because she was too smart, her mouth was not reliable. Now she saw that she and Chu Qing went to enjoy the scenery together. Even if there were maids and manservants around her, her words were not pleasant to hear, not to mention that she didn't care about her injured sister. Xiao Yenru frowned. She didn't like this feeling very much. It seemed that there were a few invisible threads pulling her, which made everything go wrong for her now, and she felt very aggrieved. Why did this happen? Well, I don't know. First Miss, I've delivered the message. First Miss and Commandery Prince Qing, please take your time. I'll leave now. Huikong said with a smile and looked at the two of them meaningfully. Although she was a nun, she had seen a lot of things. In the past, she had seen couples in the Yuhui nunnery, and there were many people who came to the nunnery to have a rendezvous. When she saw them, she would naturally pretend that she couldn't see or understand them. It was convenient for others and convenient for herself. As a nun, how could she care too much? However, Xiao Yenru's face darkened and she said, Huikong Nun, I'm worried about my fifth sister. I'll go back with you. She was full of displeasure, but she couldn't explain too much to a nun. Huikong Nun didn't say anything about her, but she just had an indescribable feeling, which made her angry and annoyed. Xiao Wanru did it on purpose. She was sure. One moment, it was Chiu Yu, and the next moment, it was Chu Qing. Xiao Wanru's injury on her foot was sometimes good and sometimes not good. She kept making trouble because she wanted to spread something that was not in line with her reputation. She would definitely find a chance to expose her. Commandery Prince Qing, I can't accompany you. My fifth sister's foot is still injured. After saying that to Huikong Nun, Xiao Yenru said to Chu Qing with a little modesty. Since the fifth Miss's foot injury is serious, first Miss, please take your time. Chu Qing knew that he couldn't be anxious at this time. He smiled slightly and said very politely, but there was a trace of contemplation in his eyes. Xiao Wanru's foot was injured. In fact, after making trouble for so long, he didn't believe it. But he didn't know what the fifth Miss Xiao meant. Chapter 586. When Xiao Yanru returned to the courtyard, she went to Xiao Yanru's silence room first. After following Chu Lu into the room, she found that Xiao Wanru was lying on the couch. Her legs were stretched out, and her long skirt trailed down, making it hard to see what exactly was going on. Fifth sister, let me see your feet. Xiao Yanru took 2 steps forward and walked to the bed with concern, intending to lift Xiao Wanru's skirt. Yujie, who was guarding in front of the bed, hurriedly stepped forward and stood in front of the bed. First Miss, fifth Miss's feet are now covered with medicine. You can't look at them casually. Yujie, I'm afraid that the medicine you applied was also inappropriate. You'd better let me have a look, otherwise I'll really be worried. Xiao Yanru said softly. First Miss, don't worry. I have applied ointment for others before. There won't be any mistake. Yujie stood still in front of Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru coughed in a low voice and ordered, Chu Lu, ask the first Miss to sit down. Eldest Miss, please sit. Chu Lu moved a chair over and placed it in front of the couch. Xiao Yanru took 2 steps back, sat down calmly, and looked at Xiao Wanru's face. Xiao Wanru's face was not bad, still pink and ruddy, and her lips were very attractive without any makeup. Even if Xiao Wanru was injured, she couldn't have been seriously injured. Fifth sister, did you know Commandery Prince Qing before? Since Xiao Wanru made it clear that she didn't want to see it, Xiao Yanru didn't insist and asked softly. Why do you say that, big sister? I have never seen Commandery Prince Qing before. Xiao Wanru said with certainty. On my way there just now, Commandery Prince Qing asked me about fifth sister, which is why I came back late just now. I intended to ask him what it was about, but Commandery Prince Qing gave me a watertight explanation. I don't know why he... Xiao Yanru said with a frown and a hint of worry in her dignified look. He was obviously worried because of Xiao Wanru. Eldest sister, don't worry. I have nothing to do with this Commandery Prince Qing. Today is the first time I've met him. What did he ask about me? Xiao Wanru said with a serious face. It's good if you have nothing to do with him. Xiao Yanru nodded. Although she still looked a little worried, she looked much better than before. He asked about your hobbies, likes and dislikes, what you usually do in the yard and when you will go down the mountain. Xiao Wanru raised her eyebrows and said coldly, what does Commandery Prince Qing want to do? Doesn't he know that men and women are different? Moreover, I don't even know him, how can he ask such questions? Xiao Yanru nodded in agreement and said, it's rude of me to say that, but he didn't ask me directly just now. He just mentioned it implicitly, so I can't say anything too aggressive. I just said a few words in code. I hope this prince can be polite and don't say anything. Fortunately, he was still polite. After I hinted at him, he said that he had lost his sense of propriety for a moment and that it would not happen again. Xiao Yanru said with a sigh of relief, it should be that Commandery Prince Qing knows that even if he can't control his feelings, he can't ruin others' reputation, so he will not take the initiative to inquire about you in the future. Xiao Wanru sneered in her heart. It seemed that she was thinking about her, but she kept pointing out one thing. Was she trying to say that Chu Qing was interested in her? Chu Qing was very handsome. Although he was not as handsome as Chu Luchen, who looked like an alluring young man coming out of an ink painting, nor was he as elegant as Wen Shiqi, who looked a bit ethereal, he was still a rare outstanding man. In addition, he was a commandery prince now. If he fell in love with her, even if she didn't want to marry him, she must be happy in her heart. At a certain time, this kind of joy could even become fierce. Xiao Wanru had never experienced such fierce feelings in her last life or this life, but it did not prevent her from sorting out many things before and after. She figured out what she couldn't figure out before in a moment. Chu Qing's appearance today was not accidental, or it had something to do with her a long time ago. He might even have made an appointment with him in her name. Otherwise, it was impossible for Chu Qing to show up here at this time to enjoy the scenery. He had just returned to his family, so he naturally had a lot of things to show others. How could he have the time to enjoy the scenery leisurely at this time? If Xiao Yanru had made an appointment with him on behalf of her, in order to make the situation seem real, she would naturally mention what she was wearing today. The reason why she dressed like this was not to confuse her, but to prevent her from wearing other clothes today. Xiao Yanru was creating an ambiguous relationship between her and Chu Qing. Why? If what she said just now was really true for a teenage girl, it would be very easy to seduce her. A young and handsome man fell in love with a girl, but he was very polite. In order to protect her reputation, he could only hide aside and watch her secretly. How could such deep love not make an innocent girl fall in love? Based on Xiao Wanru's simple experience in this life, she was really just a girl who knew nothing. Even though she had passed her 14th birthday, she had grown up in the Yuhui nunnery. She was still young before she went to the Yuhui nunnery, so she didn't know anything about love between a man and a woman. Of course, she didn't understand the tender affection in Chu Qing's eyes when he looked at Xiao Yanru just now. Unfortunately, Xiao Yanru still misjudged Xiao Wanru and didn't expect that Xiao Wanru was actually a reincarnated body. She had thought that with Xiao Wanru's experience, how could Xiao Wanru understand? Even if Xiao Wanru was cunning, Xiao Wanru would believe her after she said it a few more times. Big sister, Commandery Prince Qing has nothing to do with me. Please don't mention him in the future. Xiao Wanru said with a little displeasure on her face. Okay, of course. I said a few more words just now because I'm afraid that you will arouse suspicion when you have more contact with Commandery Prince Qing in the future. Since fifth sister understands, I will be careful with my words. I also hope that Commandery Prince Qing can restrain his desire, otherwise he may cause trouble. After Xiao Yanru nodded, she showed a little worried and said, after all, he is the emperor's new nephew, and the emperor has always doted on his two nephews. Big sister, you mean? Xiao Wanru understood and showed a panic on her face. I'm afraid that he will directly ask for a marriage. I heard that he is not young. If. Xiao Yanru frowned and looked really anxious. Then she reached out to rub her forehead and continued without looking at Xiao Wanru's face, the Empress Dowager has always doted on the children of the late emperor. You can see it from Prince Chen. Now if Commandery Prince Qing really asks for a marriage, speaking of this, Xiao Yanru couldn't go on. She looked at Xiao Wanru with a melancholy look, as if she couldn't come up with a good solution. The Empress Dowager and the Emperor doted on Chu Luchen, but it didn't mean that they would also dote on Chu Qing. If Chu Qing was really favored by the Empress Dowager, he wouldn't have to put on so many hypocritical airs at this time. Of course, Xiao Wanru wouldn't say this out loud. She looked a little flustered. She held the corner of the quilt beside her, sat up, and asked, Big sister, what should I do now? I don't know either. Xiao Yanru said worriedly. After hesitating for a moment, she looked at Xiao Wanru and said, why don't we ask Grandma to report this matter to the Empress Dowager and say that you are still observing mourning and can't get engaged? Her words sounded very reasonable, but after thinking about it carefully, she found it absurd. Not to mention that Xiao Wanru would observe mourning for a few months, how did she know that Chu Qing would ask for a marriage? She couldn't explain it clearly and prove her innocence. She had been meditating in the Yuhui nunnery, so how could she know Chu Qing's thoughts? Could it be that they had an affair long ago? Was it just a pretense? Moreover, it was even more inappropriate to ask old madam to come forward. Xiao Wanru had never felt good about old madam's feelings for her. Therefore, this way sounded feasible, but in fact, it was absolutely impossible for Xiao Wanru. She shook her head and said, we'd better not bother Grandma with this matter. Grandma is still ill. Moreover, Commandery Prince Qing didn't tell us directly about it, so how could we know? But if you really go to ask for a marriage, it will be too late. Moreover, it will affect your reputation of observing mourning for a long time. If you really want to, you have to wait until you go down the mountain to talk about it. Xiao Yanru seemed to be worried about Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru lowered her head and said after thinking for a while, "Big sister, do you think I should go to see him and make it clear?" "Of course, this is the best. As long as you make it clear, it will be fine." Xiao Yanru nodded repeatedly. But after saying that, she seemed to feel that she had agreed too quickly, so she looked hesitant again and said, "This kind of thing, if it is seen by others, I'm afraid it will not be good." "Then don't let others see it." "Miss, don't let others see it. Make it clear to Commandery Prince Qing," Yujie said anxiously. Looking at the servant girl who was wholeheartedly protecting Xiao Wanru, Xiao Yanru finally couldn't bear it anymore, and a smile flashed across the corners of her mouth. "It would be best if we cannot let others see it. But this is the nunnery, and the people of the Ministry of Justice have not left yet. Even at night, it's still." Xiao Yanru raised a new question with a worried look on her face. "Fifth sister, you'd better not go. It's better to be safe than sorry. If there is any accident, fifth sister, you'd better jump into the Yellow River to wash yourself clean." "I can't make it clear." "Miss, I'll go. Write a letter and make it clear." "I'll send it to him for you," Yujie said anxiously again. This. Xiao Wanru was very hesitant. "This is a good idea. At least your master is not in danger. You are really a good girl. If someone finds you, as a servant girl, you can just say that you met him by chance." Xiao Yanru nodded repeatedly, sighed with emotion, and reminded Yujie by the way. "Miss, please let me go. I'll be in less danger than you." Yujie looked at Xiao Wanru and said earnestly. Then she knelt down in front of Xiao Wanru's bed with a plop and put her hands on the bed. "Miss, please let me go. If Commandery Prince Qing really asks the Imperial Palace to grant me a marriage, your reputation will be ruined." "Well. Okay." Xiao Wanru looked at Yujie and then at Xiao Yanru, bit her lip, and made up her mind. "Since you're going to write a letter, you can't make it too detailed. You should be vague in case you miss anything." Xiao Yanru thought for a while and reminded Xiao Wanru. It seemed that she was thinking about Xiao Wanru. But in fact, it was full of traps. A vague letter could be understood in one way or another. She glanced at Xiao Yanru's face with her watery eyes, and her eyes slowly became cold. Xiao Yanru was really scheming. She was trying to send her weakness to Chu Qing. Chapter 587. A letter that was truly written by oneself, would explode with destructive power at the right time. It was certainly not something one could withstand. Even her maternal grandma would be implicated because the other party was Chu Qing. As the eldest son of the late emperor, both the emperor and the empress dowager had to take care of him on the surface. Moreover, the letter was written vaguely, so it could be interpreted in any way. Forget it. Xiao Wanru suddenly reached out to rub her head, took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and leaned back. "Miss." Yujie was at a loss. She didn't know why her master suddenly stopped talking just now. "Fifth sister, since you want to have a rest, I'll go back first. If you need any help, just send someone over to tell me. No matter what, you are my blood relative and the miss of Duke Xing's mansion. The reputation of our Duke Xing's mansion can't be ruined." Xiao Yanru stood up and said goodbye with a smile. She didn't get angry because of Xiao Wanru's capriciousness. Her expression and behavior were very good. "Thank you, big sister," Xiao Wanru said with a weak look. She didn't open her eyes and just nodded. Xiao Yanru turned around and left the room with Shuqi, returning to the main room from the corridor. After arriving at the main room, Xiao Yanru sat down on the chair in front of the desk with a sneer on her face. After serving tea, Shuqi said in confusion, "First miss, the fifth miss really doesn't want to send a letter to Commandery Prince Qing. Isn't she afraid that Commandery Prince Qing will really ask the emperor to grant her a marriage at this time and ruin her reputation?" "She will." Xiao Yanru said with certainty. She looked at the yard outside the window, where Qing was sweeping the floor with a big broom and moving some hard objects from time to time. There was a small jar there, which Xiao Yanru hadn't paid attention to in the past. She didn't know if it had been in the yard. Didn't the fifth miss just say forget it? Shuqi became more and more confused. She is afraid that I will know it and ruin her plan, so she pretends to be calm. Xiao Yanru said with a sneer. She didn't believe that Xiao Wanru was not afraid. If it was a really stupid woman, she would definitely feel that this matter was actually not bad. Chu Qing went to ask for a marriage. If the emperor agreed, she would be the legal wife of the Junwang. In addition, Chu Qing's own conditions were not bad. This should be a good marriage. However, smart women would be more careful and think that it was not suitable for Xiao Wanru to get engaged at this time. If she attracted a man's attention, she must have a bad character and behave dissolute. If she went to ask for a marriage, she would not only not become the princess consort of Commandery Prince Qing, but also be a concubine. Even if Xiao Wanru had the backing of Great Elder Princess would not be able to protect her if she annoyed the emperor. At most, she would be a nominal concubine, and the position of the legal wife would not be given to her. Xiao Yanru had been in contact with Xiao Wanru for a period of time, so she knew that Xiao Wanru was definitely not a stupid person. In this case, Xiao Yanru was more aware of the consequences and would never let Chu Qing propose marriage. Moreover, she had hinted that Chu Qing was very devoted to her. Even if she wronged herself, she could not ruin Chu Qing's reputation. If she made this request, Chu Qing would definitely listen to it. There was no danger, and Xiao Yanru was sure to deal with this matter. Xiao Yanru did not believe that Xiao Wanru would not be tempted. The reason why Xiao Wanru said the last words must be to guard against her. Xiao Yanru's departure at this time was to give Xiao Wanru time to make arrangements. With Xiao Wanru's cautious character, she should not really go there by herself. Moreover, didn't she say that her foot was injured now? Of course, this was not a sure thing. If Xiao Wanru really went there by herself, she must not let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She must definitely send someone to catch the adulterer. If she really caught the adulterer, she could not only take Xiao Wanru hostage, but also threaten Commandery Prince Qing. How could she let go of killing two birds with one stone? Chu Luyue would definitely like this kind of thing. She stood up, picked up the writing brush, dipped it in the inking stone, and began to write. After finishing writing, she put the paper in her hand into the envelope, handed it to Shuqi, and said, "Go down the mountain right now and give this letter to Moyan. Ask her to give it to Prince Yu, and then ask my father to invite the imperial physician who specializes in treating trauma to the Yuhui nunnery to treat fifth sister's injury." Xiao Yanru would not directly send the letter down the mountain to others. She would first send it to Moyan, her personal maid in her mansion, and then send it out. In this way, she could avoid being found out and also confuse the public. The imperial physician generally did not treat others, but if her father came forward, it should be possible. Moreover, Xiao Wanru was the granddaughter of Rui, and great elder princess. It was said that the emperor also attached great importance to this doctor surnamed Chu. Invite the imperial physician, the one who knows best about trauma? Yes. Xiao Yanru nodded. She did not believe that she could not find out the truth about Xiao Wanru's pretense. Yes, first miss, but, don't you want to, give this to Prince Shou? Shuqi took the letter and asked after hesitating for a moment. It was not that she was bold, but sometimes Xiao Yanru would send 2 letters. It's not necessary this time. Just ask Prince Yu to secretly find someone to keep an eye on Chu Qing. Xiao Yanru shook her head and said with a smug sneer on her face. At this time, there was no need to send too many people. Unlike that dark night, the more people who took advantage of the burning house, the better. In this way, it would be more difficult to figure out who did it. Of course, this had nothing to do with her. She was just a weak girl in the boudoir. Miss, do you want me to bring another maid from the foot of the mountain to serve you? As soon as I leave, there will be no maid to serve you. Shuchi looked at Ching outside the window and said indignantly, "Look at the 5th Mississippi." She said that she would go up the mountain to cultivate in seclusion, but she brought so many maids with her and even left an inferior maid in the yard. "But miss, it is inconvenient for you to go out alone." Especially when she was about to go down the mountain occasionally, leaving only Xiao Yenru here. Shuchi really felt indignant for her master. In any case, her master's identity was the most noble. The upbringing of the eldest daughter of lineal descent in an aristocratic family was usually different from that of other daughters. Although other misses were also lineal daughters, their upbringing was far from enough. What was more, the 5th miss was an outsider. "No, you alone are enough. It's inconvenient for me to serve others." Xiao Yenru shook her head. She didn't need too many maids to serve her. Xiao Wanru had lived on the mountain for a long time, so it was normal for more maids to serve her. However, she would only stay on the mountain for a few days. It was not good for her to make a scene. "Miss, what about your lunch later?" Shuchi was still worried. "When you go out later, tell Ching to bring me lunch at noon. As for dinner, you should be back." Xiao Yenru blinked her eyes and looked at Ching the maid in the courtyard. Ching who seemed to be strong, pushed the jar aside and continued to clean the room. It was inconvenient for Xiao Wanru last time because Xiao Wanru's maids were not there. But now they were all there. Even if they were not there for a while, Shuchi had told the little maid in advance. Even if the little maid brought her lunch later, she wouldn't starve. This little maid was Xiao Wanru's maid. She usually did some rough work in the courtyard and cleaned the courtyard most of the time. She seldom went to Xiao Wanru's silence room. At first glance, she could tell that she was not valued. It was much better to use Xiao Wanru's maid than to use her own. "When you tell her later, give her a bigger pouch. Tell her that I reward her for cleaning so hard, and then ask her to bring me lunch," Xiao Yenru ordered. "Yes, Mississippi. I'll tell her now and then go down the mountain." Seeing her master's look, Shuchi knew that she must have an idea again, so she immediately answered and left. When she walked out of the door and saw Ching in the courtyard, she showed a big smile and walked over. "Ching what are you doing?" Shuchi walked up to Ching and asked in surprise when she saw that she was still fiddling with the jar. Shuchi felt that she had never seen this jar before. "There are water lilies in this jar. I'm going to find a good place to put it so that the 5th miss can have a look," Ching said without looking back and continued to push the jar. Although the vat wasn't particularly big, there was still a vat of water in it. There were a few water lilies on the surface of the water, and there were even flowers blooming on them. To be able to see such a vat of water lilies in this autumn really made people's eyes light up. Just the rich green color was enough to make people feel happy. Where did the water lilies come from? They are still blooming. Shuchi was really surprised. There was also a place in the Yuhui nunnery where there were water lilies, but at this time, the water lilies had withered. It was impossible to see such thin but blooming water lilies. "I got them from Pushun Nun. I heard that Pushun Nun will come back at some time. The water lilies in this jar are excellent." The 5th miss was very happy to see them when she went to see Pushun Nun last time. She heard that Pushun Nun was not here and no one took care of this jar of water lilies, so she asked the abbess to take care of it. Ching finally pushed the jar to a place in front of the silence room. After looking around, she felt satisfied, wiped the sweat on her forehead, and looked back at Shuchi with a bright smile. "Sister Shuchi, are you going out?" "Yes, I'm going down the mountain to get some clean clothes for my master. The clothes I took before are not light and my master doesn't like them. I can't come back at noon. Ching please help my master get lunch from the kitchen, okay?" Shuchi's attention fell on Ching again, and she quietly handed over a pouch. In the past, Ching would sometimes get a pouch from Shuchi. At this time, she took it very naturally. After touching it and finding that there were a lot of things in it, she said with an increasingly bright smile, "Sister Shuchi, you can go back. Don't worry. I've even got dinner for the first miss, not to mention lunch. You can go down the mountain. Thank you, Ching. Don't mention it. I'm a maid. There's no difference between serving the first miss or the fifth Mississippi. Both the first miss and the fifth miss are my masters. You don't have to thank me, Ching said with a carefree smile. Although her voice was not loud, Xiao Yenru, who had been paying attention to them, heard it clearly and couldn't help showing a smile on her face. Ching was an inferior maid who couldn't attract Xiao Wanru's attention, but she was Xiao Wanru's maid. It was a good choice. Xiao Yenru had asked Shuqi to reward her with money in various affairs. It seemed that she was not completely stupid. She needed such a maid by her side now. Chapter 588. Ching put away the purse and was very active in doing things. Before Xiao Wanru came back with the lunch, she had already brought it back for Xiao Yenru, and it was a large portion. Seeing Ching come in with a lunch box that was bigger than usual, Xiao Yenru smiled gently. She didn't care about the amount of food, but the people's hearts. It was the most advantageous for her to recruit Xiao Wanru's people quietly, which might come in handy at the critical moment. First miss, I've brought lunch for you. Sister Shuqi told me to do it before she left. Ching put the huge lunch box in front of Xiao Yenru, wiped her sweat, and said, "Thank you." Xiao Yenru smiled, put down the writing brush in her hand, looked at the huge lunch box, and asked, "Why are there so many dishes today?" "I don't know what you like to eat, so I specially brought a few more dishes." Ching reported with a smile, took out the dishes in the lunch box quickly, and put them on the table one by one. "Isn't it fixed? How can you take more?" Xiao Yenru said in surprise. People like them, who lived in the Yuhui nunnery for a long time, had ordered everything in advance, and it was impossible for there to be more. "I asked you what dishes you like, first Mississippi. There are some other dishes on the table, so I casually took a few more dishes," Ching said with a flattering smile. She meant that she didn't know whether others had fewer dishes, but she just needed Xiao Yenru to pick a few dishes she liked. Xiao Yenru couldn't help laughing and said, "You can't do it next time. If you take more dishes, others must have fewer dishes, which is not good for them." "Yes, first Mississippi." "I see." Seeing Xiao Yenru put down the writing brush, Ching took the basin with great eyesight, filled it with water, and then brought it to Xiao Yenru attentively, asking her to wash it. After washing it, she brought a handkerchief to Xiao Yenru, and then poured the water away. "Ching have you served fifth sister in the room?" Xiao Yenru asked with a smile when she saw that Ching served others smoothly. "I've seen Sister Yujie and Sister Chu Lu serve fifth miss like this. I'm an inferior servant girl, so I can't enter the room at will. I can only watch in the yard." Ching lowered her head and said with a little envy. As an inferior servant girl, she was bound to be envious of her principal personal servant girl. This not only represented a higher monthly salary, but also a higher prestige. Which principal personal servant girl didn't have more prestige than inferior servant girls? Even many principal personal servant girls had servants to serve them except in front of their masters. "Ching do you also want to be the principal maid in the room?" Xiao Yenru sat down and asked with a smile. Seeing the teapot and teacups on the table, Ching hurriedly reached out to pour a cup for Xiao Yenru. After that, she nodded hard and said with a little shyness, "Yes." "Then you have to work hard. Maybe my fifth sister will make you her personal maid," Xiao Yenru said with a smile. Ching widened her eyes and looked at Xiao Yenru in surprise. "First miss, do you think that I might become the fifth Mrs. Principal Maid?" "Why not? Ching is such a smart girl. She knows how to serve others in the yard. If my fifth sister is willing, she will definitely make me her personal maid." Xiao Yenru picked up the teacup, took a sip, and said with a gentle smile, "Really? That's great." Ching was pleasantly surprised, but she immediately lowered her head and said with disappointment, The fifth miss won't let me be her principal maid. Why? Xiao Yenru asked with interest in a soft voice. The fifth miss already has so many capable sisters around her. Besides, I'm just an inferior servant girl who can only do some rough work and is of no great use. Qing said aggrievedly, I can't get close to the fifth miss. Why can't you get close to my fifth sister? Sometimes she asks you to serve her, doesn't she? Xiao Yenru asked in confusion, and the smile on her face became increasingly gentle. It was unknown whether it was because of the gentle smile on Xiao Yenru's face that Qing became bolder and said, Sister Yujie and Sister Chulu won't let me get close to the fifth Mississippi. Even if the fifth miss occasionally asks me to go over, they will stop me intentionally or unintentionally. The fifth miss trusts Sister Yujie and Sister Chulu most, so she won't see me. Qing said with her head lowered more and more, looking very aggrieved. If my fifth sister makes it clear that she doesn't want you next time, you can come to me. I like you very much and can make you my principal maid. Xiao Yenru said with a soft smile. Really? Qing suddenly raised her head and looked at Xiao Yenru in surprise. Of course. Would I lie to you? Xiao Yenru looked her up and down with a smile and nodded. Thank you, First Mississippi. Thank you, First Mississippi. I will definitely do a lot of things for you in the future. I am very diligent. Qing's eyes lit up with excitement. Of course, Xiao Yenru knew about her reaction. She smiled at once, picked up the chopsticks without saying anything, and slowly began to have lunch. The green girl didn't say anything while eating or sleeping. She didn't clean up her chopsticks until she finished the meal quietly. You are given to my fifth sister by Great Elder Princess. During the period of time on the mountain, you should mainly serve my fifth sister. After we go to the Yuhui nunnery and return to Duke Xing's mansion, I will ask my fifth sister for you. At that time, you can directly come to my courtyard and be my principal maid. Xiao Yenru wiped her lips with a handkerchief and ordered. First miss, rest assured. I understand. I understand. Qing was still excited at the moment. Hearing Xiao Yenru's words, she became even more excited. The fifth miss would only stay on the mountain for a few months at most. After she went down the mountain and went to Duke Xing's mansion, she would be a member of Duke Xing's mansion. At that time, as long as the first miss asked, it would be done. As an inferior servant girl, it was not a great thing to be suddenly promoted to the level of a principal maid. Any inferior servant girl would have the same reaction as Qing when they encountered such a thing. The principal maids of the misses of aristocratic families had to be carefully selected. An inferior servant girl was nothing. It was a great thing to be favored by the Mississippi. Xiao Yenru was satisfied with Qing's reaction. This was the effect she wanted. I will also live on the mountain temporarily during this period of time. Speaking of this, Xiao Yenru paused for a moment and continued, I may leave. But no matter what, I will always remember what I promised you. You can serve my fifth sister with peace of mind. If I have something to do, you can help me occasionally when you are free. First miss, rest assured. Just tell me what you need. I will definitely do it without hesitation. Qing almost patted her chest and promised that she would definitely help Xiao Yenru. That's good. It's nothing. It's just a small errand. There are water lilies in that vat, right? Why don't you push the vat of water lilies to my side so that I can see them when I push the window open? Xiao Yenru rolled her eyes slightly, stood up, and slowly pointed out of the window and said. It was an extremely small thing. Such a small thing was used to test Qing. In fact, it was not about the small vat of water lilies, but to see if the girl was on her side. Although Xiao Yenru felt that she had said so much and any smart servant girl knew how to choose between her and Xiao Wanru, she had always been cautious, so of course she still had some doubts. She could use the water lilies to prove it. Okay, first miss, wait a moment. I will push the vat to your window so that you can appreciate the water lilies when you are tired. Qing rolled up her sleeves and said, Sister Yujie said that the fifth miss wanted to draw water lilies. I think it's more important for the first miss to appreciate it when you are tired. As Qing said, she hurriedly turned around and was about to leave without any hesitation without cleaning up the remaining lunch on the table. Wait a minute. Xiao Yenru stopped her with a smile. First miss, what's wrong? Qing stopped and asked in confusion. Since the fifth sister wants to draw, of course you can move it after she finishes. If you push the vat over rashly, how can the fifth sister draw? Xiao Yenru said with a soft smile. Of course, she didn't care about the vat of water lilies. She was very satisfied with Qing's attitude, so she wouldn't really ask Qing to move it, especially the vat that had attracted Xiao Wanru's attention. Xiao Wanru was not easy to fool. She had to be cautious when dealing with her. First miss, you are so kind. Qing said. The fifth sister is still young, so I naturally have to take care of her. Clean up these things and see if there is anything you like to eat. Eat it together. Xiao Yenru said with a smile and pointed to the lunch on the table. Thank you, first miss. Qing smiled so widely that her eyes couldn't be seen. It seemed that she was completely convinced by Xiao Yenru, and then she cleaned up quickly. Xiao Yenru went into the inner room to have a rest, leaving Qing outside to clean up. After cleaning up, she said to the inner room, First miss, I'm going to the kitchen now. First miss, do you need me to bring back anything else? I don't have anything else. Go ahead. Xiao Yenru's extremely gentle voice came from inside. Yes, first miss. Seeing that Xiao Yenru had nothing else to say, Qing walked out of the main room with the lunchbox. When she came to the corridor, she saw Yujie. They looked at each other quietly and then separated. Yujie entered the inner room, opened the lunchbox in her hand, took out a few simple dishes, put them on the table, and then looked at Xiao Wanru, who was standing by the front window to admire the water lilies, and said, Miss, it's time to have lunch. The water lilies are in good condition. Xiao Wanru said. From her window, she happened to see a good jar of water lilies. Some of the slender and elegant flowers were about to bloom. She suddenly remembered her previous idea of raising a jar of water lilies. When she was in Jiangzhou, she didn't raise them, so she only had an empty fish tank. When she came to the capital, she didn't raise them. The fish tank was given to her by Chu Luchen, but she didn't raise them. After she went up the mountain, it was even more inconvenient for her to raise them. Unexpectedly, there was such a jar of water lilies at this time, and they were in good condition, which was really rare. They were sent by His Highness. He said that he sent them in the name of Pushun Nun for you to enjoy. Yujie turned around and saw the jar of water lilies at the window, so she answered with a smile. Qing, did you go there? Xiao Wanru raised the corners of her mouth slightly and unconsciously smiled sweetly. She turned around and left the window. Yujie hurriedly helped her sit down at the table. Chapter 589. Yes. It seems that she is very satisfied with Qing. Just now, I saw Qing come out with a smile on her face. Yujie reported in a low voice. Before they looked at each other just now, they had already given each other a hint. She doesn't have enough manpower now, so it's great for her to get one from me. Moreover, she is using my maid, who was sent by my grandma. No matter from which aspect, she is someone I trust. If someone I trust comes to check on my affairs, it will definitely get half the result with twice the effort. Xiao Wanru raised the corners of her mouth into a beautiful arc, and her smile was elegant and indifferent. First miss, what do you want to do? Yujie asked nervously. She won't be so anxious to use my people right away. At least she has to get in touch with them. Of course, if at a critical moment, she will also send them out. Just wait. Xiao Wanru said casually. Tonight? Yujie asked hesitantly. Let's see tonight. Xiao Wanru said with a casual smile, and a trace of gloominess flashed across her eyes. Xiao Yanru wanted to see her play tonight and asked her to meet Chu Qing in private. Even if she didn't meet Chu Qing in private, she had to send a letter to him, but she just sat there and watched her go out tonight. Qiu Yu loved Xiao Yanru very much. How could he let go of such an opportunity? Xiao Yanru wanted to see her play, but she was waiting for her play. First Miss, an official from the Ministry of Justice has come to ask you to go over and ask you about what happened today. Qing wiped her sweat and came in to report to Xiao Yanru. Qiu Yu? Xiao Yanru said with a frown. Yes, it seems so. The Ministry of Justice has sent someone here to ask you to go over and ask for your opinion. Qing said with a nod. Xiao Yanru frowned unhappily. She did have something to say to Qiu Yu, but it was better to say it in private. Why did Qiu Yu ask someone to bring her here in such a big way? It had little to do with her. If he wanted to talk to someone, he should talk to Xiao Wanru. Why did he come to her directly? What did he mean by asking for her opinion? She did have something to do, but she couldn't say it in front of everyone, especially when Qiu Yu sent a message at such an inappropriate time. Why did he come to her instead of Xiao Wanru? Did you find my fifth sister? Xiao Yanru asked with a gentle smile despite her displeasure. Yes, but elder sister Chu Lu replied to 5th Mississippi. She said that it's not a big deal, and Lord Qiu can handle it as he sees fit, Qing replied. This matter was naturally not a big deal. It was originally an accident, and no one was hurt. At the moment, it was Qiu Yu who was nervous. It seemed that Qiu Yu wanted to please him and get some benefits to cure this matter, which was not in line with his intention. Xiao Yanru thought for a while and said, go to the Ministry of Justice and tell them that since fifth sister doesn't think it's a big deal, just let it go. Yes, this servant will go and inform him immediately. Qing turned around and ran out quickly. When she reached the door and opened it, she saw 2 people at the door. One was an ordinary officer of the Ministry of Justice, and the one standing behind him was Qiu Yu. Qiu Yu's eyes lit up when he saw Qing coming out. He gave a meaningful glance to the person he brought with him. The person hurried forward and asked with a smile, what did your young miss say? Qing half closed the door and said to the person outside, the first miss said that it's a small matter and that Lord Qiu can handle it himself. Doesn't your young miss have anything to say? Qiu Yu didn't give up and waved his hand. The officer of the Ministry of Justice stepped back and made room for Qing at the door. Well, I'm afraid it's not convenient for the first miss to see you. Qing hesitated for a moment, looked Qiu Yu up and down, and didn't dare to refuse directly. Was she afraid that others would see it? Qiu Yu was overjoyed and hurriedly said, go and report to your first Mississippi. It's okay if she doesn't come now. Ask her to come here in the evening. Can she tell her about the 2 old maids? Something happened to the 5th miss, and it's not convenient for her to go out. If the first miss still doesn't ask about it, I don't know how to deal with it. He meant that there were only 2 sisters in Duke Xing's mansion on the mountain now. Since the younger sister had an accident, the elder sister naturally had to take full charge of this matter. Moreover, the 5th miss also said that he could deal with it. It was not a big deal. The reason why he took it on was because of Xiao Yanru. Now that he hadn't achieved his goal, he naturally didn't want to leave. If he didn't take advantage of such a chance to get close to the beauty, he was afraid that he wouldn't have another chance in the future. The transfer order from the Ministry of Justice had come. In a few days, he would leave the Yuhui nunnery with the rest of the officers of the Ministry of Justice. At that time, it would not be easy to see the first Miss Xiao again. Therefore, he had to see the first Miss Xiao today no matter what, and it would be better to ask her about her feelings. If she also liked him, he would go back and ask someone to propose to her. Well, the first miss refused just now. Qing said in embarrassment. Just now was just now, and now is now. Go and make it clear. What happened between your first miss and the 5th miss before is not a big deal. Qiu Yu said coldly with a straight face. He worked in the Ministry of Justice, and there was a severe aura under his straight face, which scared Qing so much that she ran into the courtyard without saying a word. How could a lowly servant girl be so daring? Just a little scare and it would be over. Do you have to see me? Xiao Yanru's face darkened. She took a deep breath to suppress her anger. She had planned to ask Shuqi to go there secretly at night after she came back, but now it seemed that Qiu Yu would not give up until he saw her. His men were at the door now, and he probably would not leave without a definite answer from her. If they were seen by others, it would ruin her reputation. No, she couldn't let the people of the Ministry of Justice guard the door. She stood up, walked around the room twice, and stopped. She looked at Qing and was about to say something, but suddenly stopped. She hadn't fully trusted this little servant girl yet. Of course, it was one thing to trust her or not. She was afraid that her shrewd fifth sister would do something bad to her if she knew about it. She couldn't pass the message directly. She turned around, walked to the window, picked up a pen, wrote a few words, hung it for a while, folded it into a small note, and handed it to Qing. Go and pass this note to the people of the Ministry of Justice and ask them to pass it to Lord Qiu. The officers of the Ministry of Justice had their own rules, and they would never peep at such things. Moreover, since Qiu Yu had sent someone here, this person should be Qiu Yu's trusted subordinate. As for Qing, Xiao Yanru was not worried. It was just a note that Qing couldn't see, and it didn't seem to be a message. She had to let this girl hear it. Besides, even if this girl saw it, she wouldn't know what she had written. How could an inferior servant girl know how to read? Qing left. When she stepped out of the door, she quickly opened the note in her hand, glanced at the words on it, and then folded it in her palm calmly. After that, she walked out of the door and headed for the gate of the courtyard. Standing by the window, Xiao Yanru saw Qing walk to the gate of the courtyard obediently. The half-closed gate prevented her from seeing what was going on outside, but she could vaguely hear Qing talking to the man. Then she saw Qing come in, close the gate, and hurriedly report to her. Only then did she sit in the chair inside with relief. It was impossible for Qing to see what was written on the note on the way. Miss, I've sent it out. He's gone. Qing came in and reported. I see. You can leave. Xiao Yanru waved her hand and said calmly. Yes. Qing left respectfully. When she got out of the door, she slightly raised the corners of her mouth and turned to leave. Shuqi came back around dinner time. Before she entered the room and reported to Xiao Yanru, she saw Qing come in happily with a food box. Shuqi couldn't help looking at her in surprise. It was still early for dinner, and Qing was too flattering. Seeing that Shuqi was here, Qing was very well behaved. After handing the food box to Shuqi, she retreated to the yard and continued to be an inferior servant girl, not fighting for food. However, she was just a third-class inferior servant girl now. Even if she wanted to fight for food, she couldn't win. Xiao Yanru was very satisfied with Qing's tactfulness. After Qing left, she asked, how's it going? Rest assured, Mississippi. Everything went well. Shuqi came over with the food box and said as she took it out. Accompany me to meet Qiu Yu tonight. Xiao Yanru nodded and felt a little relieved. Recently, she had been feeling uneasy. Even though she had done that all the time in the past, she still felt a little worried. Miss, it's better not to meet the first Miss Qiu. He seems to. Shuqi stole a glance at Xiao Yanru. Seeing that she was not angry, she said in a low voice, I think he seems to have a special feeling for you. I must deal with the matter of the two old maids. It seems that Qiu Yu is unwilling to let go without my word. Xiao Yanru said with a headache. Of course, she didn't want to have anything to do with Qiu Yu. However, if she didn't deal with the matter of the two old maids, it was very likely that Xiao Wanru would take advantage of it. Even if this possibility was not great, she still did not feel at ease. She had to deal with this matter as soon as possible, lest a long night brings many dreams and many troubles arise. Shuchi could have told Chiou-yu about it, but judging from Chiou-yu's attitude, she had to do it. She had written down the place and time of the appointment on the note. After meeting Chiou-yu in the evening, she would tell him about it and make it clear. It would be inconvenient for her to meet Chiou-yu in the future. As the night fell slowly, Xiao Yanru walked out of the main room slowly with Shuchi. Unexpectedly, she met Qing-er. Seeing Qing-er's flattering and happy smile, Xiao Yanru stopped and asked, "Fifth sister, are you asleep?" "First miss, the fifth miss said that she would go out for a walk and hasn't come back yet," Qing-er reported with a smile. Xiao Yanru said with a trace of complacency on her face. As expected, Xiao Wanru couldn't sit still and should go to find Shu Qing at this time. Prince Yu's men should have been watching her for a long time. If they saw that she had a private meeting with Chu Qing, they would definitely find something on them. Foot injury? To hell with it. Leave the door open. I'll go out for a walk too, Xiao Yanru said with a smile. If she went out and came back, she should be faster than Xiao Wanru. When Xiao Wanru had an accident, she would definitely be in the yard. Chapter 590. The place where Xiao Yanru and Chiou-yu agreed to meet was in a Buddha hall not far away, which was the nearest Buddha hall to the courtyard. There were only 2 lamps hanging at the door of the medium-sized Buddha hall. In the dark night, the 2 lamps were not conspicuous. When Yujie helped Xiao Wanru to walk here, Xiao Wanru couldn't walk anymore. She reached out to press her foot and looked at the Buddha hall with some hesitation. "Miss, let's go in and have a seat. We'll leave in a while. It's not convenient for you to walk like this with your injured leg." Yujie reached out to support her and said. Xiao Wanru leaned most of her body on Yujie. Although she walked with a limp, no one would notice it if they didn't pay attention to it in the dark. Moreover, there was no one around. "It's too dark inside, and we don't have a light." Xiao Wanru looked at the half-closed door and said. "Miss, we just want to have a rest and don't want to do anything. It's okay to sit inside. If you are afraid, I can tell you a few stories. After you have a rest, we'll leave and go back." Yujie helped Xiao Wanru and persuaded her. Xiao Wanru moved her half-hanging foot, thought for a while, and could only say, "Okay, let's sit for a while and leave." "Yes, we'll leave after sitting for a while." "Don't worry, miss." Yujie helped Xiao Wanru into the dark hall and then disappeared inside. A man in black flashed by, looked at the hall, and then sneaked into the hall through the door where they entered without making any sound. They were just 2 girls from the inner yard. How could they possibly notice him? The black-clothed man lay on the beam of the hall and looked down. However, he did not notice that there was another shadow that followed him into the hall like a wisp of smoke. Then, the shadow hid behind another beam. It was very dark in the hall. Xiao Wanru held Yujie's hand and walked a few steps, and then she didn't want to go any further. Yujie helplessly helped her to sit down on a stool behind the gauze curtain. In the darkness, she heard Xiao Wanru's heavy breathing. She didn't know whether it was because of fear or the pain in her foot. There were layers of gauze curtains in front of the hall, and there was a gap in the corner of the hall. After Yujie helped Xiao Wanru sit down, she casually sat on a corner of the gauze curtain. She had originally come from the temple, so she felt very safe here. After sitting down, he smiled and said, "Miss, what kind of story would you like to hear?" At this time, Xiao Wanru's breathing had calmed down. After thinking for a while, she said softly, "Whatever, as long as it's something festive." "Whatever. Let me think about it." "Oh, I got it. Can you tell me a story about the wife of the top scholar?" Yujie asked with a smile. Her voice was particularly crisp in the dark. "Of course. Tell me about it." Xiao Wanru's voice sounded thin and soft in the hall. "Okay, then I'll tell you. Listen carefully." Yujie's voice was also very low. There were only 2 people in the hall, so it was very quiet. If her voice was loud, there would be some echoes. In the darkness of the night, it made people feel even more scared. Yujie spoke in a low voice and very slowly. It was unknown whether she wanted to recall something. From time to time, she stopped to think for a long time. During this period of time, there was a blank period. Fortunately, Xiao Wanru still listened very carefully and did not interrupt Yujie even when she didn't speak. In fact, this story was not good at all. It seemed that it couldn't be put together in a short time, so she had to think about it carefully. It was just a lie. It was just a lie to an ignorant miss from an aristocratic family. The two men in black on the beam didn't think so. Suddenly, footsteps came from outside the hall, immediately breaking the silence here. The person's footsteps were in a hurry, and it could be heard that he was coming here. The servant girl's voice immediately stopped. The master and the servant girl seemed to be a little flustered. The servant girl stood up and squeezed to her master's side. At this time, there was no light at night, so it was inevitable that the two women were a little flustered. The door of the hall had not been closed since they came in. This time, it was pushed open a little. A man strode in and walked straight forward after coming in. He walked to the Buddha statue in the middle, took out a match, illuminated the scene in front of him, and lit up a small Buddha lamp. Immediately, a place in front of the Buddha statue was lit. The man in black looked at the man below cautiously. At this time, his back was facing them, so he couldn't tell who he was at the moment. He didn't look back, just looked at the Buddha statue in front of him quietly, with his hands clasped behind his back, and didn't move at all. Didn't he come to meet Fifth Miss Xiao in private? The man in black looked at the master and the servant girl behind the gauze in the corner. In the dim light, he vaguely saw that the master and the servant girl were hugging each other nervously. It didn't look like a man who came to meet Fifth Miss Xiao in private. The man in black felt that he couldn't understand them. Didn't it mean that Fifth Miss Xiao would be in trouble today? Either she or her servant girl would be in trouble today. But now that the man appeared, why didn't he come forward? Could it be that he was waiting for something? Or it seemed that it wasn't his master's order. The man in black lay motionlessly, glanced at the back of the man in front of the Buddha statue and the master and the servant girl in the corner with a thoughtful look in his eyes. At this time, he would naturally stay motionless and observe. There came another sound from the door. The footsteps were a little lighter than before, but there seemed to be more footsteps. There were two people. The man in black immediately heard the difference. Outside the door, Shuqi appeared first. Looking at Qiuyu, who turned around in surprise in the hall, she breathed a sigh of relief, and then made way for Xiao Yanru to walk in slowly. The man in black on the beam frowned tightly. This scene didn't match any of the scenes he had imagined. It seemed that it was not the fifth Miss Xiao who wanted to meet Commandery Prince Qing in private, but the first Miss Xiao who wanted to meet Qiuyu in private. The man in black knew the person below, and his master had some secret reports about this person. The left assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, who was also the legitimate youngest son of Earl Liang, was also a well-known child from an aristocratic family in the capital city. He had a good family background and a good character. Although he was serving in the Ministry of Justice now, it was not because of his father's connections, but because of his real ability. It was said that it was the emperor's order. Because his identity was not bad and he was quite capable, his master took notice of him. First Miss. Seeing Xiao Yanru walk in slowly, Qiuyu took 2 steps forward excitedly and bowed to her first. Xiao Yanru stopped and also bowed to Qiuyu, Your Excellency. Qiuyu coughed in a low voice, stepped aside, and gestured with his hand, First Miss, please. The light inside was much clearer. Xiao Yanru hesitated for a moment, but still walked inside. Compared with the dim light outside, she preferred to walk inside. At least, she could see Qiuyu's expression and behavior clearly. When she arrived in front of the altar, she turned around and said directly, Your Excellency, the 2 old maids actually had nothing to do with me, but... Speaking of this, she looked at Shuqi, who had followed her in. Shuqi took 2 steps forward, knelt down in front of Qiuyu with a plop, kowtowed heavily, and then raised her head and said, "Your Excellency, this was originally the 5th Miss's business and had nothing to do with the 1st Miss, but it has something to do with me. I hope you can spare them for the sake of the 1st Miss and the 5th Miss." "What does it have to do with you?" Chiu Yu was stunned, and then his face darkened. As a member of the Ministry of Justice, he had a sharp reaction to cases. Xiao Yenru didn't say a word and just raised her eyes to look at him. Chiu Yu immediately realized that his face was too cold. He hurriedly took a deep breath, relaxed, and asked gently, "What the hell is going on? Did you ask the 2 old maids to hurt the 5th Miss?" "Your Excellency, how dare I? I wouldn't dare to do such a thing even if I had eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's gall." Shuqi shook her hands and explained eagerly. "Then what the hell is it?" Chiu Yu frowned. He came here today with the intention of meeting Xiao Yenru in private and asking about their relationship. It was really not a good thing for him to question his sweetheart's maid. However, since Shuqi had said this, he had to ask about it. "Your Excellency, I didn't know the 2 old maids at first, but after I came back, my grandma came to me and said that the 2 old maids are related to me. One is the sister of my first aunt, and the other is the grand-aunt of my second aunt. The matter between them is just a personal grudge, and they don't dare to do anything serious. She asked me to ask my miss to solve it. My miss is kind enough to take me here to make it clear." Shuqi wiped her eyes with a handkerchief, and her eyes turned red. She choked with sobs and said, "It's my 2 relatives' fault. Both of them are from the countryside and don't know the rules. They beat and scold people whenever they want. It seems that they deserve it. But it's impossible for them to hurt the 5th Mississippi." Chiu Yu had investigated the matter of the 2 old maids. Although he felt that something was wrong, he didn't think it was a big deal. After all, no one was hurt. The only one, Xiao Wanru, said that she had hurt her foot. In Chiu Yu's opinion, she just pretended to be so. If she was hurt, why didn't she go back and walk such a long way? He looked up at Xiao Yenru, only to see that Xiao Yenru also bowed deeply to him and said, "Your Excellency, I hope you can find out the matter and let them go down the mountain as soon as possible. Although Shuqi is my maid, I used to treat her like a sister. If she is really scolded by her family, I will also feel sad. As for the 5th sister, she also said that you should deal with it." Her words made Chiu Yu fall silent for a while. It was indeed not a big deal. As the victim, Xiao Wanru didn't force him to deal with it. It was not difficult for him to let them go. Seeing that the beauty came to plead for a maid beside her, Chiu Yu felt more and more pity for the person in front of him. She was indeed a kind-hearted and beautiful girl. He couldn't help liking her. I'll deal with it right away. Since it's just a small misunderstanding, it can't be a big deal. 1st Miss Xiao, don't worry." Chiu Yu reached out to help Xiao Yenru. Xiao Yenru had stood up alertly. Chiu Yu coughed in a low voice and his face turned slightly red. It was just a pretext, and what he was going to say next was the key. Chapter 591. 1st Miss. Chiu Yu coughed in a low voice again, looked at Xiao Yenru attentively with affection, and said, "1st Miss, you are talented, beautiful, kind, and gentle. I wonder, if you can, Your Excellency, since we've finished talking, I'll leave with Shuqi." Xiao Yenru suddenly pulled Shuqi up, interrupted Chiu Yu, and turned to leave. "1st Miss, please wait a minute. How could Chiu Yu let go of such a great opportunity?" He took 2 steps in a hurry and stood in front of Xiao Yenru. Afraid that he might not have time to speak, he had no time to hesitate at this time and said hurriedly, "1st Miss, if I propose to your mansion, Your Excellency, please be careful with your words." Xiao Yenru interrupted him and said, "Your Excellency, as a descendant of an aristocratic family, you should know that there are some things you should say and some things you shouldn't say. If you say something you shouldn't say, you may even ruin someone else's reputation. Please forgive me, 1st Mississippi. I really have no other choice. I'm going back in a few days. If I don't know 1st Miss's mind, how dare I propose to you? Please tell me clearly. If First Miss likes Commandery Prince Qing, I have nothing to say and won't pester you. No one else will know what you said today. Qiu Yu said anxiously. Although his face was flushed, he blurted out the words. He spoke so quickly and urgently that Xiao Yanru couldn't stop him even if she wanted to. Your Excellency, there's nothing between me and Commandery Prince Qing or you. Please behave yourself. Xiao Yanru took a step back, lowered her head, and said with a dignified look. Since Qiu Yu said so, she had to answer him. Now she couldn't leave cleanly even if she wanted to. The meaning of her refusal was very obvious. Although Qiu Yu had thought about it, he refused her sincerely now. Heartbroken, he took a step back and staggered. He fixed his eyes on Xiao Yanru and said bitterly, I know that I can't compare with Commandery Prince Qing. I'm not a descendant of the royal family, and I'm not even the lineal eldest son, so I can't inherit the title of nobility. But I will try my best. If First Miss, I will definitely treat First Miss well. He had buried these words in his heart and felt uncomfortable if he didn't say them out. Your Excellency Qiu. Xiao Yanru blushed and said angrily. First Miss, I don't blame you for choosing Commandery Prince Qing. No matter what, he is a descendant of the royal family and has royal blood running through his veins. If you follow him, it will be his blessing. When you were together in the maple leaf forest, I could see that you two had feelings for each other. If I hadn't appeared at that time, you two would have traveled together. The rest are the two of you. Me, appearing there was an accident. Qiu Yu lowered his head and said in a low voice without looking at Xiao Yanru. At this time, he was completely immersed in the pain of being rejected by Xiao Yanru. The trivial things that were not enough to explain anything before were magnified infinitely. He felt that he was really stupid at that time. He clearly saw that the two of them were a couple who loved each other, but he interfered. When he thought of Xiao Yanru's rebellious behavior when he met her before, he understood everything. He turned around and staggered out of the room. In the end, his wishful thinking was in vain. Your Excellency Qiu. Xiao Yanru's angry voice came from behind, but he turned a deaf ear to it and continued to walk forward, feeling disheartened. As expected, the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion, the first beauty in the capital city, was not someone he could covet. Your Excellency Qiu, there's nothing between me and Commandery Prince Qing. Xiao Yanru took a few steps forward and said angrily to Qiu Yu. Qiu Yu stopped and slowly turned around. The expression on his face changed from sadness to surprise. He suddenly turned around, grabbed Xiao Yanru's hand, and said excitedly, First Miss, you said that you don't like Commandery Prince Qing, but you like, because of excitement, he couldn't even speak for a moment. Seeing that the situation was not good, Shuqi hurriedly came over and pulled Xiao Yanru out, while saying angrily, Your Excellency, if you are a sensible person, don't say anything. Our First Miss can't decide everything by herself. If you meet our First Miss in private, you will ruin her reputation. Do you want to force our First Miss to lose her chastity? Shuqi said and ran towards the palace with her servants. Qiu Yu took 2 steps forward and wanted to catch up with them. But after hearing Shuqi's words, he stopped and reached out his hand, but finally stopped. Xiao Yanru and her servant had walked to the door and then disappeared at the door. As the footsteps faded away, they should have left. Qiu Yu had been standing quietly and then breathed a sigh of relief. In any case, the first Miss Xiao did not say that she liked Chu Qing. She reprimanded him because he was rude. In that case, it could be said that the first Miss Xiao had a good impression of him, but she was forced to be polite. In this way, he still had a chance. Since the 2 old maids were released by her maid, he would naturally let them go. However, there was still the matter of the Ministry of Justice and the Baiyun Taoist Temple. Although he was not in charge of it, he could volunteer to help. Wen Shiqi would definitely be willing to help. With such a case related to Duke Xing's mansion, he could still meet the first Miss Xiao. After meeting her a few times, she might fall in love with him. Hearing this, Qiu Yu seemed to be relieved. His expression gradually became better. He turned around, walked to the Buddha platform pass, blew out the Buddha lamp, and then turned around and strode away. After his footsteps left, the master and the servant, who had been waiting in the corner for a long time, each breathed a sigh of relief. "Miss, does the first miss like him or not?" Yujia's voice was very low, but it could be heard clearly in the dark hall. "I don't know. I can't tell," Xiao Wanru said with some hesitation in her voice. "I think the first miss likes him." Yujia's voice was a little jumpy, which made her sound like a maid who did not know the rules. She reached out to help Xiao Wanru get up and said, "Don't talk nonsense." Xiao Wanru rebuked her. "I'm not talking nonsense. It's true. When we were in the maple leaf forest, the first miss, Commandery Prince Qing, and Lord Qiu enjoyed the scenery together. The three of them were always happy. They left you in the pavilion to rest and the first miss left by herself. Don't you like him?" Yujia said unconvinced. "You can't say that she likes him very much. How can a woman like several men?" Xiao Wanru reached out to pat Yujia's hand and said, "If you talk nonsense again, I'll send you back to the mansion." Yes, miss, I don't dare to do it again. I just guessed it. The first miss is so beautiful and has long passed the age of engagement. Naturally, there are many people who love her. But why doesn't she get engaged? Can't she pick out a man after choosing for so long?" Yujia helped Xiao Wanru to the door. She begged for mercy while making wild guesses. It could be seen that she was a spoiled little girl. The pair of master and servant also slowly disappeared behind the door of the hall. The first man in black moved. In a flash, he flashed out of the hall and chased after the pair of master and servant. After he left, the second man in black also flashed away, but he did not stare at him. He flashed back in another direction and went directly out of the Yuhui nunnery. His task was to prevent the fifth Miss Xiao from getting into trouble in the hall. Since nothing happened in the hall, it was not his business. When Xiao Wanru returned to her courtyard, she saw Xiao Yenru and her servant in the corridor. "Where did you go, fifth sister?" The pair of master and servant seemed to be standing in the corridor and chatting. Seeing Xiao Wanru enter the courtyard, Xiao Yenru came to Xiao Wanru and asked with a smile when she got close. Her eyes fell on Xiao Wanru's feet, which were inconvenient for her to walk. Most of her weight was on Yujia, but even so, it was still inconvenient for her to walk. "Let's go out for a walk after dinner," Xiao Wanru said with a faint smile. As she said that, she helped Yujia and wanted to go in, as if she didn't want to talk more with Xiao Yenru. "Fifth sister, your leg is injured. How can you just walk around?" "When I asked Shuchi to go down the mountain, I asked her to invite an imperial physician. He should be able to go up the mountain tomorrow to check on your leg. If you are really injured, what should we do?" Xiao Yenru said with a smile, looking concerned and considerate. "Big sister, I don't need it." Xiao Wanru said with a cold face, "I've almost recovered." "How can it be almost recovered? It's only been a day." "Sister, you should go to have a rest first. It's not easy to invite an imperial physician of the royal family. He may come tomorrow with a female physician after being invited today. It's much more convenient than other physicians." Looking at Xiao Wanru's legs, Xiao Yenru said with an increasingly friendly smile. Her smile seemed to be really considerate of Xiao Wanru. After saying that, she turned around and went back to her main room with Shuchi, leaving Xiao Wanru standing at the door of the silence room with a displeased face. "Miss, let's go in and have a rest." Yujia helped Xiao Wanru and said. Xiao Wanru nodded, took a deep breath, and then helped Yujia into the silence room. In the courtyard, Qing looked out of the door and said to herself, "It's so late. Where have the two misses gone? They should be going to bed now. I'm so sleepy." After saying that, she yawned, closed the door, put down the big broom in her hand, and turned into a wing room in the corner. The lights in the courtyard went out one by one. It seemed that everyone had fallen asleep. The man in black guarding outside looked at the darkness in the courtyard and knew that there would be no more trouble. He disappeared from the roof in a flash. He had to go out of the Yuhui nunnery and go down the mountain to report what he had seen tonight to his master. Although he felt that these things were not serious, his master always had to analyze a lot of things. If he didn't report in detail, he would be in serious trouble if something really happened. Moreover, didn't he say that the fifth miss was going to have a private meeting today? Why did she look more like the first miss? But what if it was the first miss? The secret guard's heart trembled and he felt that he couldn't think about it anymore. This kind of thing was not something he, a secret guard, should think about. After coming out of the Yuhui nunnery, he found a horse tied in the dark, jumped on it, and rushed down the mountain. Then he went to a courtyard at the foot of the mountain. His master was not in the capital city today. Otherwise, he would not be able to return to the capital city at this time. The city gate would not be opened at this time. In Chu Liuyue's courtyard, after hearing the secret guard's detailed account of the matter, Chu Liuyue's face darkened, and his eyes were dark and cold. Did Xiao Yanru really have other thoughts? Chapter 592. The imperial physician arrived at noon the next day, followed by Nanny Sheng, who served Madam of Duke Xing, and a female physician with the imperial physician. Hearing that the patient was the granddaughter of Rui, and great elder princess, imperial physician Chu specially invited a female physician from the imperial palace. There were female physicians in the imperial palace. In fact, there were some palace maids who were sent to the imperial palace at a very young age to learn from the imperial physicians and serve several imperial physicians. There were not many female physicians who could really learn, but it was much more convenient to have female physicians. The imperial palace was full of the emperor's concubines. Some diseases couldn't be diagnosed without seeing them with their own eyes, so there was the position of female physician. Nanny Sheng went to see Xiao Yanru first, and then went to Xiao Wanru's silence room accompanied by Xiao Yanru. However, when she was at the door, she was stopped by Yu Jie and Chu Lu. First Miss is still copying Buddhist scriptures. We can't disturb her at this time. Yu Jie stepped forward and bowed to Xiao Yanru and said. Xiao Yanru frowned. Although her voice was soft, there was a touch of displeasure in it. Didn't I tell your miss yesterday that an imperial physician would come to treat her today? Why is she copying Buddhist scriptures again? Miss has been copying Buddhist scriptures since this morning and asked us not to disturb her. First Miss, please wait a moment. Chu Lu also came forward and bowed to Xiao Yanru, and then said in embarrassment. Xiao Wanru had such a characteristic that she didn't allow anyone to disturb her when she was chanting and copying Buddhist scriptures. The two maids knew it, so did Xiao Yanru. Wasn't she worried that her injury would be discovered by the imperial physician? Xiao Yanru sneered in her heart, but she didn't show any anger on her face. She said to imperial physician Chu behind her, Imperial physician Chu, please take a rest in my room. It happens that I also have a few questions about medical skills to ask you. Imperial physician Chu looked at the closed door of the silence room and then at Xiao Yanru, who was polite and even mentioned medical skills in order to be more tactful. Both of them were misses of Duke Xing's mansion, but why were they so different? One of them was arrogant and even refused to see the imperial physician invited from the imperial palace, while the other was kind and dignified and took care of everyone's dignity. Sure enough, the first Miss Xiao deserved her reputation throughout the capital city. They were waiting in Xiao Yanru's main room. Even though she was guarding Xiao Wanru, Xiao Yanru was very polite. She first greeted the elders in the mansion to Nanny Sheng, and then asked about her brothers and sisters of the same generation. Hearing that everyone was fine, the smile on her face became more and more gentle. After that, he smiled at Imperial Physician Chu. Fifth younger sister sprained her ankle yesterday and I don't know the exact situation. I'm really worried, so I've troubled Imperial Physician to make a trip over. If fifth younger sister's ankle is completely healed, I'll naturally thank you heavily. How did fifth young miss injure her foot? Imperial Physician Chu asked with a smile. She said that she accidentally twisted it, but I didn't see the details. Yesterday, 2 old maids accidentally hurt my 5th sister when they quarreled. My 5th sister was very angry at that time. It happened that the officials of the Ministry of Justice were there, so she specially asked them to punish the 2 old maids. Xiao Yanru told her what had happened yesterday with a smile. Of course, she didn't mention Qiu Yu and Chu Qing. Imperial physician Chu frowned and became increasingly pessimistic about the 5th miss of Duke Xing's mansion. She sent 2 passers-by to the Ministry of Justice just for a minor injury. It could be seen that the 5th Miss Xiao was a bad person. First Miss, didn't you see the 5th Miss's injury? Another day has passed. I don't know what will happen to her. Nanny Sheng was very worried. Don't worry, Nanny. It's not a big deal. She just fell down yesterday, so the 5th Miss can continue to enjoy the scenery. Moreover, she went out for a walk when she came back in the evening and came back later than my master. Shuqi said straightforwardly. Don't talk nonsense. 5th sister just had dinner and went out for a walk because she was bored. Xiao Yanru rebuked her in a low voice. Yes, First Miss, I was wrong. Shuqi lowered her head and said aggrievedly. Imperial physician Chu saw all of this and became increasingly pessimistic about the 5th Mississippi. Her arrogant temper was really not good. Even the favored concubines in the imperial palace were a little more restrained than her. She could walk again and again after spraining her ankle. It seemed that she was not seriously injured or not injured at all. Imperial physician Chu suddenly felt that it was unnecessary for him to come here at all. Even if he came here, it would be useless. The 5th Miss Xiao just wanted to put on an act. This kind of pretense had happened a lot in the imperial palace. It was just that the women in the imperial palace pretended to be in order to compete for favor. But he didn't know why the 5th Miss Xiao came here. Could it be that she wanted to punish 2 innocent old maids? She was too narrow-minded. Or she was a little vicious. Imperial physician Chu, my servant girl talked nonsense rudely, which made you laugh. Although my 5th sister doesn't let me see her injury, it's because she is not very close to me. She has been in the Yuhui nunnery for many years and is not very close to people in the mansion. I specially came up the mountain to accompany her because I'm afraid that she will still be unfamiliar with people when she goes down the mountain and returns to the mansion in the future. Xiao Yanru explained with a smile and a sincere look. Imperial physician Chu nodded repeatedly and thought that the 1st Miss Xiao was both talented and beautiful. Her intention was much kinder than others. Seeing Imperial physician Chu nodding repeatedly, Xiao Yanru felt complacent and picked up the teacup to cover the sneer on her face. No matter how beautiful Xiao Wanru was, it didn't matter. A vicious woman who was used to putting on an act and stirring up trouble was not someone the imperial family would like. As an imperial physician valued highly by the emperor, Imperial physician Chu could still speak in front of the emperor. He didn't need too many people to know about it. Only the imperial family knew about it. Whether it was Prince Yu or Prince Shou, Xiao Wanru could not think about it. Or even if she wanted to enter the imperial family, she could only choose someone like Commandery Prince Qing, who was not favored and marginalized. In fact, she still hoped that Xiao Wanru and Commandery Prince Qing could be a couple. Of course, it was the kind of lowly thing where the one who ran away with the other became a concubine. This was also an important reason why she wanted Xiao Wanru and Chu Qing to fall in love with each other. Xiao Wanru, who had stayed in her boudoir for a long time and had never seen a man in the past, was easily fooled when she saw a handsome man falling in love with her, even though she had some means. As long as Xiao Wanru fell in love with Chu Qing, she could plan a lot of things in the future. Thinking of this, she wondered what happened to Xiao Wanru yesterday. She waited in the corridor yesterday because she wanted to hear the news of Xiao Wanru's accident as early as possible. But when she came back, she didn't see it. Could it be that although Xiao Wanru went out, she didn't meet Chu Qing and only asked her maid to send a note to him? If that was the case, it would be good. Chu Qing happened to be interested in her, so she would definitely instigate Chu Qing to seduce her. Chu Qing's position as the commandery prince was not favored by everyone. If Xiao Wanru married him and became his concubine, she could even ask Chu Qing to give her away. Concubines were just playthings to begin with. Chu Qing didn't seem to be someone who was easy to deal with. If there were great benefits, it would be a piece of cake for him to give a concubine to someone else. She would never let Xiao Wanru fall into a good situation. At the first sight of Xiao Wanru, she knew that Xiao Wanru was her opponent. Xiao Wanru looked like a scourge. She wanted to make Xiao Wanru lose the possibility of competing with her before Xiao Wanru went down the mountain and kill everything as soon as possible. Even if she made a big noise, so what? She was not afraid of making a big noise. She was only afraid of making a small noise. He put down the teacup in his hand and gently she wiped the corner of her mouth and smiled. Just as she was about to speak, she saw someone walking over from the door. "First miss, our master is ready. Please come over." Yujie suddenly appeared at the door, bowed deeply to Xiao Yenru, who was inside, and said, "Okay, please come with me, Imperial Physician Chu." Xiao Yenru said with a gentle look. She stood up first, not angry at Xiao Wanru for making her wait a little longer. She led them to the door of the silence room, where Chu Lu had been waiting for a long time. Seeing them come over, she bowed and made way. Xiao Yenru walked in with Imperial Physician Chu. The huge screen was folded and divided the silence room into two. "Big sister, forgive me for being injured and not being able to get up." Behind the screen, the girl's voice was elegant and moving, which flowed through everyone's heart like flowing water. Imperial Physician Chu looked at the screen in surprise. He didn't see her but only heard her voice. He felt that this fifth Miss Xiao should be a rare beauty. What's more, her voice didn't sound like the kind of woman who was deliberately unreasonable. "Fifth sister, you are too polite. Imperial Physician Chu is the best doctor in the Imperial Institute of Medicine. Yesterday, I asked someone to go down the mountain and invite him here. Fifth sister, is it convenient for you to let the female physician brought by Imperial Physician Chu treat your injury?" Xiao Yenru said with a generous smile, turned to the screen, and said softly to Xiao Wanru, who was lying on the bed. She said it very politely and took everyone's face into consideration. It was really impossible to find fault with her. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. As long as she was in front of others, the first Miss Xiao's behavior and manners were completely flawless. She really deserved to be called talented and beautiful. "Big sister, in fact, it's not very good. Forget it." Xiao Wanru shook her head, retracted her feet in front of her, touched them, and refused in a tactful way. "Alas, how can I not see the doctor when I'm injured? I don't know how your injury has been since yesterday. I didn't sleep well last night because I was thinking about your foot. Since the Imperial Physician has taken the trouble to come here, I can't let him come here in vain." Xiao Yenru said, "Fifth sister, how can you hide your illness for fear of treatment? But I have asked Huiding Nun to treat my injury yesterday, so I don't need to treat it today." Xiao Wanru said weakly. "Huiding Nun just knows a little about medical skills. How can she treat my injury accurately?" Xiao Yenru said disapprovingly. When she was on the mountain, Huiding Nun was already there. At that time, she was not the disciple of Mingqiu Nun, so she only suffered from the simplest headache and fever. She could treat the minor illnesses of the nuns in the Yuhui nunnery. But, well, fifth sister, don't resist anymore. Imperial Physician Chu, can you ask the female physician to come in and treat my injury? Xiao Yenru directly made the decision for Xiao Wanru this time and said the latter half of the sentence to Imperial Physician Chu outside the screen. Imperial Physician Chu nodded and motioned the female physician to come in. The female physician, carrying a small medicine box for dressing wounds, turned around the screen and came in. Chapter 593. Seeing the female physician come in, Xiao Yenru made way for her. The female physician stepped forward, put down the small medicine box in her hand, and said, "Fifth miss, you've overstepped." "You're welcome," Xiao Wanru said lightly. The female physician raised her head and looked at Xiao Wanru. After being stunned for a moment, she hurriedly lowered her head to hide the amazement in her eyes. She had been working as an assistant for imperial physicians in the imperial palace and had seen all kinds of beauties, but she was still shocked when she saw the fifth miss at the first sight. No one in the imperial palace could compare with such a beauty. Yujie carefully lifted Xiao Wanru's foot, rolled up her trousers, and revealed her bandaged ankle. The complacency on Xiao Yenru's face slowly faded, and she couldn't help frowning. Looking at her tightly bandaged ankle, she suddenly had a very bad feeling. She couldn't help clenching the handkerchief in her hand and pursing her lips. The female doctor calmed herself down and loosened the knot. After she pulled it loose, she took off the white cloth that was tightly wrapped around the wound. The swollen ankle looked like a steamed bun, which was frighteningly red and swollen. Xiao Yenru's face changed. "Miss, why didn't you get better after applying the ointment? Why did it get worse instead?" Yujie exclaimed in a low voice. The female physician frowned, reached out to wipe Xiao Wanru's red and swollen ankle, smeared the ointment on her hand, and then put it to her nose to smell it. "Are you injured? How is your injury?" Hearing the voice inside, Imperial Physician Chu asked slowly. "Very badly injured." The female physician reached out to press Xiao Wanru's wound and answered as she pressed, "She should have sprained her ankle before. Someone has corrected it later, but she is seriously injured and needs to have a good rest." As for the ointment. The female physician paused for a moment. "What's wrong with the ointment?" "It was given by our first Mississippi. She said it was the best ointment in the imperial palace." "Is it useless?" Yujie said with a crying voice. She reached out to take a bottle of ointment from the table beside her and handed it to the female physician. Xiao Yenru's face changed dramatically. She was about to reach out, but she immediately restrained her panic and said, "How could it be useless? I also used it before." The female physician took the ointment and smelled it. Then she sniffed it with the ointment on her hand and said to Yujie, "Take it to Imperial Physician Chu." She was just the most ordinary female physician. There were some things that Imperial Physician Chu could say, but she didn't dare to say. Yujie hurriedly turned out of the screen and handed the ointment in her hand to Imperial Physician Chu. Imperial Physician Chu took it and dipped his finger into it. He put it in front of his nose and smelled it. Then his face changed greatly. "Is this the ointment that Fifth Miss is applying?" "Yes, Fifth Miss's foot is smeared with this. Your ankle is badly swollen. If you keep using this kind of medicine, your foot will not only not recover, but also, the wound will fester and even rot." The female physician looked at the wound on Xiao Wanru's foot, which was really frightening. Xiao Yenru's foot and said. "Xiao Yenru, who was, Xiao Chu, Xiao Yenru," Yujie said. "Sister," the female physician said. "Xiao Yenru, miss, she Yansh, she, and, ba, she, big sister, why?" Xiao Wanru raised her eyes and looked at Xiao Yenru, who was in front of the bed. "First Miss, you brought this ointment to my master. Why is it getting worse and worse?" "First Miss, you have always said that this ointment is very useful. Why does it make my master disabled and rotted?" Yujie said in a crying voice and finished Xiao Wanru's unfinished words. Nanny Sheng, who was standing outside the screen, also looked terrible. She wanted to interrupt, but she couldn't help her at the moment. She just rubbed her hands anxiously and began to sweat on her forehead. Didn't the first miss say that she could definitely peel off Xiao Wanru's skin this time? How did she end up like this now? How could it be possible? This is the ointment from the mansion. It's from Shuqi in the Imperial Palace. Show it to Imperial Physician Chu. Xiao Yenru said in a panic. Yes, I'll get it right away. Shuqi ran out in a hurry. After a while, she came back with a bottle of ointment and handed it to Imperial Physician Chu. Imperial Physician, please have a look at it. Is it the same as the fifth Mrs. Ointment? Imperial Physician Chu reached out to take it, put it in front of his nose and sniffed it. Then he also took out some and put it on his hand. After looking at it carefully, he said, "This bottle of ointment is good." The fifth Mrs. Ointment was originally good, but later it was mixed with something, so that the ointment is not only bad, but also may make the injury worse. "First Miss, are these 2 bottles of ointment yours?" "They are mine. I asked Shuchi to go to the mansion to get them. At that time, both my 5th sister and I were injured, but... Xiao Yenru seemed to be stunned and stammered involuntarily. "Imperial Physician Chu, who wants to hurt my master? Who can't tolerate my master? My master has hidden in the Yuhui nunnery and seldom comes out. What else can she do?" Yujia looked at Imperial Physician Chu and said angrily with red eyes. "Well, I really don't know." Imperial Physician Chu said helplessly. As an imperial physician, he could treat illnesses, but it didn't mean that he could solve cases. There were 2 bottles of the same ointment, and both of them were awarded by the imperial palace. However, one bottle was good, while the other bottle was harmful. The harmful bottle was given by the first Miss Xiao. Although Imperial Physician Chu thought that the first Miss Xiao was unlikely to do such a thing, it was really in front of him. "First Miss, I remember that these 2 bottles of ointment are the ones you gave me before, right? They seem to be kept in old Madam's private warehouse at that time. Could it be that someone wants to hurt old Madam?" Nanny Xing rolled her eyes and said loudly in a hurry. "Find out. We must find out who wants to hurt me and my 5th sister." Xiao Yenru said anxiously and said to Xiao Wanru with red eyes, "5th sister, we will definitely find out the truth. You and I are both on the mountain. We don't know who wants to hurt us like this. Few people can enter Zuping's private warehouse. It's impossible that we can't find out the truth." Xiao Wanru said with a cold smile. She intended to protect Xiao Yenru even if she wanted to push old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion out. Old Madam was an elder. Even if something really happened to her, she couldn't do anything to her. No wonder Xiao Yenru could live like a fish in water even in the imperial palace in the last life. Her ability to turn black into white was not something that ordinary people could have. All the sins belonged to others. She was still the spotless and pure first Miss Xiao. However, if one often walked by the river, one's shoes would get wet. She would slowly destroy the good reputation she had accumulated little by little. "Big sister, you gave me this ointment. You said it was very useful and asked me to use it when I was injured. But now you said that this ointment was drugged in the mansion. Big sister has nothing to do with this matter." Xiao Wanru's face looked very cold, and her bright watery eyes were full of deep coldness. She looked at Xiao Yenru, who was lying on the bed quietly, and then smiled gently and said, "Big sister, whatever you say. Anyway, someone in the mansion will take the blame, just like what happened in the Baiyun Taoist temple before." Her words sounded gentle, but the meaning in her words was very direct, which almost made Xiao Yenru feel embarrassed. She didn't expect that Xiao Wanru would directly tear off the veil of affection between them in front of the imperial physician and the female physician. She really panicked for a moment. "5th younger sister, this matter will be investigated thoroughly. I will never let 5th younger sister suffer for nothing. You have to believe me. Believe that our mansion will definitely." Xiao Yenru promised. Xiao Wanru closed her eyes slightly and said tiredly, "Big sister, stop talking. I'm going to have a rest. I will ask my maternal grandma to investigate this matter. 5th Miss, this is the matter of our Duke Xing's mansion. Even if there is something wrong, it is our mansion's business. How can we let great elder princess intervene?" Nanny Xing said disapprovingly outside. Xiao Wanru remained silent, as if she didn't hear what Nanny Xing said. Her face was pale, her eyes were closed, and she ignored Nanny Xing. After the female physician finished applying the ointment for Xiao Wanru, she looked at the beautiful and pale face of the 5th Miss Xiao and couldn't help feeling pity for her. The 5th Miss Xiao in front of her was indeed an unfavored miss as the rumors said. She didn't know what Duke Xing's mansion was thinking. They didn't dote on this noble miss and even sent someone to harm her. It was obvious that someone had harmed her in the matter of the ointment. The matter of the Baiyun Taoist temple was widely spread outside and also in the palace. The matter of Shoshui Taoist priest had a long history. Su had been to the Baiyun Taoist temple before she entered the palace. Therefore, many people were concerned about this matter, for fear that they would accidentally get into trouble. The more people paid attention to it, the more they knew that old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion wanted the fifth Miss Xiao to shave and become a nun. It was said that she forced her to shave and then asked Shoshui Taoist priest to take her to the Baiyun Taoist temple. If the old madam hadn't found that the evil Taoist priest was a man, the fifth Miss Xiao would have been ruined. It took a lot of intelligence to survive in the palace. They might not be very clear about the twists and turns, but it was certain that old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion was unkind to the fifth Miss Xiao. As for the young Madam of Duke Xing's mansion who later pushed out that the young Madam of Duke Yong's mansion, few people really believed it. She was just a scapegoat. Now the answer shown in the female physician's mind was that the first Miss of Duke Xing was also beating the scapegoat. This time, she didn't know who in Duke Xing's mansion was more unlucky. Stealing a glance at the famous beauty in the capital city, the female physician suddenly had the idea that she was a vicious beauty. Nanny Sheng, go down the mountain now and ask Grandma to investigate this matter. You must find out the person who has evil intentions against us. Xiao Yenru said loudly. Yes, I'll go down the mountain now. Nanny Sheng understood and hurried out. Miss, I'll report to Rui, a great elder princess, and ask her to make a decision for you. Chu Lu glanced angrily at Nanny Sheng, who had run to the door, and said. Go ahead. Xiao Wanru waved her hand coldly. Chu Lu turned around and rushed out of the screen. She first reached out to grab the 2 ointment bottles in front of Imperial Physician Chu, and then hurriedly chased after them. Fifth sister. Xiao Yenru hurriedly stopped her. Big sister, I'm tired and very uncomfortable. Can you stop talking, big sister? Xiao Wanru said softly, but the meaning in her words made Xiao Yenru blush. She gritted her teeth hard, suppressed the grievance in her heart, and forced a gentle smile. I was thoughtless. Fifth sister, take a rest first. I'll accompany the imperial physician. Chapter 594. Xiao Yenru knew that she couldn't be flustered or angry at this time. She had to play the role of a good sister who stood by Xiao Wanru's side. Seeing the female physician wrap Xiao Wanru's injured foot again, Xiao Yenru followed her to the outside of the screen. Outside the screen, Imperial Physician Chu looked at Xiao Yenru with a little confusion. It was obvious that he also suspected Xiao Yenru. However, he had been in the Imperial Palace for a long time and was very shrewd. After a glance, he turned his head away. Imperial Physician Chu, what should we do now? Where is the ointment? Xiao Yenru looked at Imperial Physician Chu's empty hands with her face changing dramatically and asked. The maid took it away just now. Imperial Physician Chu said indifferently. It was not harmful for him to take away the 2 bottles of ointment. It seemed strange, so he didn't want to get involved in it. Since the ointment has been applied, leave the ointment here. After applying it every day and resting for a few more months, you should be able to recover. Xiao Yenru bit her lip and glared at Shuqi fiercely. Her eyes were so cold that they seemed to want to eat her. Shuqi was so scared that she hurriedly lowered her head with a pale face. Chu Lu rushed out too fast just now, and Yujie stood in front of her. When she saw it, Chu Lu had already rushed to the door. She couldn't catch up with her even if she wanted to. Fifth Miss, just take good care of yourself. We'll leave now. Sensing the cold atmosphere in the air, Imperial Physician Chu said to the female physician who had finished packing. Thank you, Imperial Physician Chu. Yujie, please send Imperial Physician Chu off for me. Xiao Wanru's soft voice came from behind the screen. Fifth Miss, you're welcome. Imperial Physician Chu said, Fifth Miss, you'd better leave the maid to have a good rest. You should also be careful of your injury. Although it has been healed, you're still injured and it's easy for you to get into trouble again. If it's not necessary, you'd better not walk around at will." After saying that, he glanced at Xiao Yanru, who was standing aside. The first Miss Xiao had said that after the fifth Miss was injured, she not only walked a long way to enjoy the scenery, but also couldn't rest at night and ran out again. He had believed in her words before, but at this time, he suddenly realized that she was too deliberate, as if she was telling him that the fifth Miss Xiao was pretending to be injured. No matter how he looked at it, the first Miss Xiao did not seem innocent. However, this kind of thing had nothing to do with him. He was just an imperial physician who was invited up the mountain. It was better to say what he saw and tell the truth. Just now, of the two servants, one went to find old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion, and the other went to find Rui, and great elder princess. It was not easy to let it go. Imperial physician Chu also regretted it this time. If he had known that there were so many twists and turns, he should not have promised Duke Xing to go there at that time. "Thank you, Imperial Physician Chu," Xiao Wanru said. Imperial Physician Chu left with the female physician, and Yu Jia sent them to the corridor. She looked at the house and revealed a worried expression. She bowed deeply to Imperial Physician Chu. "Imperial Physician Chu, I originally wanted to send you to the door, but there's no one by our young Mrs. side now. I'm afraid something might happen, so I asked Qing to send you off." After that, he nodded and called Qing, who was in the courtyard, over. Qing responded and came over. Imperial Physician Chu and the female physician remembered that the first Miss Xiao and her servant were still in the room, but the fifth Miss Xiao was alone. After looking at each other, they nodded to Yu Jia, indicating that she could go back. After Imperial Physician Chu, the female physician, and Qing left, Yu Jia returned to the room again. Xiao Yanru had turned behind the screen again and stood in front of the bed with a very ashamed look on her face. "Fifth sister, it seems that I hurt you." "Fifth sister, don't worry. I will definitely find out who wants to hurt us. The 2 bottles of ointment were originally meant for the 2 of us, but I didn't expect that they had been drugged long ago." Xiao Wanru raised her lips sarcastically. At this time, Xiao Yanru still said that it had nothing to do with her and that it wanted to hurt her and herself. Did she really think that she had stayed in the Yuhui nunnery for a long time and only had a few people around her? She was so innocent that she couldn't even distinguish between good and bad. "Big sister, please go back," she said coldly. "Fifth sister, Xiao Yanru still wanted to explain, but Xiao Yujie stopped her. "First Miss, please go back. The Imperial Physician said that our fifth Miss should have a good rest. If she doesn't have a good rest, it may be more difficult for her to recover from her injury." Yujie said coldly and looked angrily at Xiao Yanru's face. If she had behaved like this in the past, she would definitely have been scolded by Xiao Yanru. But at this time, it was not the time to care about a maid's impoliteness. Xiao Yanru turned around helplessly and was about to leave with Shuqi, but Xiao Wanru's extremely cold voice came from behind. "Big sister, not every time someone takes the blame." Xiao Yanru turned around and wanted to defend herself, but she saw that Xiao Wanru's eyes were still closed tightly. Yujie, who was standing beside her, looked at her vigilantly, as if she would take action as long as she made any abnormal movements. After calming down, Xiao Yanru said with a sad look, "Fifth sister, time reveals a person's heart. You will know what kind of person I am." After saying that, her eyes turned red. She turned around and left in a hurry, as if she didn't want Xiao Wanru to find out her sadness. Yujie had been staring at her closely. How could she not notice her expression? At this time, the first miss was still pretending and really regarded her and her maid as fools. Xiao Yanru retreated to the door of the silence room and looked back at it. She gritted her teeth so hard that they sank into her flesh. She really underestimated Xiao Wanru. She had thought that Xiao Wanru was just a little girl who lived in the nunnery and seldom contacted others. Unexpectedly, Xiao Wanru was so cunning. Did she fall into Xiao Wanru's trap this time? If it wasn't for the fact that she didn't look like she was injured, she wouldn't have blown the matter up and even specially went to invite Imperial Physician Chu. The scene just now, although her grandmother would do as she wished and let someone else take the blame, she was afraid that she would also become a legend and even spread to the chambers of the imperial harem. She had intended to leave a bad impression on Xiao Wanru in the eyes of the imperial harem and the emperor, but now she was the one who did it. Thinking of the good reputation that she had painstakingly gained over the years, Xiao Yanru gnashed her teeth with hatred. After returning to her room, she stood quietly in the room and looked at the window coldly. Shuqi shrank in the shadow of the door and did not dare to move at all, even daring to breathe heavily. "Pack up. I'm going down the mountain." After a long while, Xiao Yanru said with her voice almost squeezed out from the root of her teeth. "Miss, it's not appropriate for you to go down the mountain at this time." Shuqi was startled and murmured. The first miss went up the mountain in order to avoid the consort selection of the princes. What should she do if she went down the mountain at this time? "Hurry up and get the carriage ready." Xiao Yanru waved her hand and slapped Shuqi hard in the face, which made her take a step back and hit her head heavily on the wall beside the door. She was in so much pain that tears immediately flowed out of her eyes. However, she did not dare to say a word and hurriedly nodded and ran out. Behind her, Xiao Yanru's red eyes were filled with madness. All her plans had to be put on hold because of this. Xiao Wanru, she would never let her go. She forced her to be unable to cultivate in the Yuhui nunnery to take refuge. When Great Elder Princess came to the door aggressively with her people, Madame of Duke Xing tried to stop her, but she failed. Ruyan Great Elder Princess rushed to the courtyard of old Madame of Duke Xing with her people. Someone had already reported it to old Madame. After hastily washing up, old Madame was helped to go to the outer room. At this moment, she saw Ruyan Great Elder Princess rushing in with a group of people. After coming in, she did not speak to old Madame and directly ordered her people to attack. The originally beautifully decorated room was immediately smashed into pieces. You. Old Madame was so angry that she could not even say a word. Her fingers trembled. Nanny Yu hurriedly patted her back so that she could breathe slowly. Seeing that the room was almost smashed, Ruyan Great Elder Princess said to old Madame in a cold voice, "You hurt my granddaughter again and again. Last time, you wanted to give her to an evil Taoist priest. This time, you directly used ointment mixed with something else to give Zhuozhua. Can the whole Duke Xing's mansion not tolerate such a little girl?" What do you mean?" Old Madame finally recovered. "Mother, in fact, I don't know who is at fault. The two servant girls were both injured on the mountain. When the eldest girl came down the mountain, she asked someone to fetch 2 bottles of ointment, but just now it was said that 1 bottle of ointment was mixed with something else. After 5th girl used it, her injury not only did not recover, but also worsened. Great Elder Princess was extremely angry and thought that our mansion intended to hurt 5th girl, but we did not know this in advance. Moreover, when the 2 bottles of ointment were sent up the mountain, we did not know who used which bottle was harmful." At this time, Madame of Duke Xing had already learned the cause of the matter from Nanny Sheng. She hurriedly explained to old Madame, and then added a key sentence, "Mother, I think that someone wants to hurt the whole Duke Xing's mansion." "I think someone wants to hurt the whole Duke Xing's mansion. I don't know if it's your political enemy or someone else. Duke Xing's political enemy wants to hurt 2 unmarried girls?" Ruyan Great Elder Princess sneered, raised her head, and said, "I don't care what you want to say this time. If you can't give us a reason, we will fight in front of the Empress Dowager." After saying that, she turned around and left with her servants, without giving the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law any chance to explain. The people of Ruyan Great Elder Princess's mansion went back the way they came. A large group of people went out of the gate of Duke Xing's mansion aggressively. Ruyan Great Elder Princess got on her gorgeous carriage, which turned in the direction of Great Elder Princess's mansion and went to Great Elder Princess's mansion. Behind the carriage, the old maids and servant girls of Great Elder Princess's mansion followed in 2 rows. It seemed that they were not easy to deal with. When the pedestrians on the road saw such a large group of people passing by, they began to talk about it. A servant of Great Elder Princess's mansion fell behind, and she looked kind. A passerby could not help but stop her and ask what had happened just now. The people from the great elder princess's residence came and then left. Something must have happened. The old maid who was stopped was eloquent. She told the matter angrily and specially said that it was proved by imperial physician Chu in the palace. Then she hurried to catch up with great elder princess's carriage. Chapter 595. What's going on? Chu Luiyue put down the wine glass in his hand and asked lightly. He sat under a restaurant, which was facing the street, and he could see Rui and great elder princess's carriage coming and then leaving in a hurry. Anyone would be shocked by such a large group of people. It is said that great elder princess went to Duke Xing's mansion and smashed it because 5th Miss Xiao was poisoned. Xiao Qizi reported. Poisoned? How could she be poisoned on the mountain? Didn't you say that she was fine yesterday? Chu Luiyue frowned and said. Last night, when the secret guards returned to the mansion, they said that 5th Miss Xiao seemed to be unable to walk and should have really sprained her ankle, but they didn't say that she was poisoned. I don't know. It's just a rumor that after the 5th Miss sprained her ankle, the 1st Miss gave her a bottle of ointment, which was mixed with incompatible drugs. Not only would it not make the ankle recover, but it would also rot and fester. They are all guessing if it was really done by the 1st Miss Xiao. Xiao Qizi lowered his head and said. Chu Luiyue frowned more and more and showed a little displeasure on his face. Xiao Yenru had been getting more and more troublesome recently. He didn't know what she was thinking. How could she do such a thing at this time? Ask someone to check it out. Chu Luiyue stopped for a moment, waved his hand and said, forget it. Don't check it out now. Let's see what happens first. He couldn't send too many of his people to the Yuhui nunnery. No one knew whose people were there. If Xiao Yenru hadn't said that she was sure about it yesterday, he wouldn't have rashly sent the secret guards there. Unexpectedly, he didn't find out that Xiao Wanru met Chu Qing in secret or passed a note. Instead, he found that Xiao Yenru secretly had an ambiguous relationship with Chiu Yu. It seemed that Xiao Yenru also had some relationship with Chu Qing. The wine glass in his hand fell on the ground, and there was a little anger in his eyes. Xiao Yenru was the candidate for his wife. At this time, it was the critical time for him to choose a wife, so there was no room for any mistake. However, he inexplicably felt very tired, as if there was something in his throat that he couldn't swallow or spit out. She was just a woman. In fact, if Xiao Yenru didn't agree with him, he didn't have to choose Xiao Yenru. Although he admired Xiao Yenru's appearance, he cared more about Xiao Yenru's background and how much help Xiao Yenru's intelligence could give him. Xiao Qizi did not dare to speak and just stood there with his head down. His master liked the 1st Miss Xiao and had a good relationship with the 1st Miss Xiao in private. In Xiao Qizi's opinion, the 1st Miss Xiao would be his female master in the future. In fact, he wanted to speak up for his future female master, but His Highness's gloomy face made him dare not say a word. After hearing the news from the secret guards last night, His Highness didn't seem to be very happy when Miss Xiao was mentioned. Your Highness, 3rd young master Wen has arrived. A guard reported at the entrance of the private room. Let him in. Chu Luiyue raised his head and said gently, with a smile on his gloomy face. The door was pushed open, and Wen Shiqi walked in slowly. He stood in front of Chu Luiyue and bowed deeply to him. Your Highness. Yuan Qing, you don't have to be so polite. Sit. Chu Luiyue said with a smile and pointed to the chair opposite him. They had known each other since childhood, so there was no need to be too polite. Thank you, Your Highness. Wen Shiqi cupped his hands and sat down opposite him with a smile. Xiao Qizi cleverly put down a set of tableware, poured a glass of wine for Wen Shiqi, and stepped back to serve. Taste it and see how it is. Chu Luiyue said with a smile. Wen Shiqi picked up the wine glass and took a sip. Then his eyes lit up and he said, good wine. Of course it's good wine. This prince specially found it from the tribute wine. I know you like to drink this kind of wine, so I specially asked Father Emperor to reward me with this. There's only this much, and there's only 5 pots of it. Bring 2 pots back later. Chu Luiyue laughed loudly, picked up the wine glass in his hand, and clinked it with Wenshichi's. Bottoms up. I can't do that. There is only so much good wine, so I naturally have to taste it carefully. I shamelessly thank your highness for your good wine. Wenshichi smiled and waved his hand leisurely. Then he picked up the wine and tasted it carefully. His smile became more and more gentle. There's no need to thank me. You were the one who helped this king previously. This king should be the one thanking you. Chu Luiyue said with a smile, took back the wine glass, took a sip, and nodded repeatedly. Although I don't like this kind of wine because it is a little too sweet, it is still excellent when I taste it carefully. Your Highness, it's just a piece of cake. I will always remember your great kindness to us. Wenshichi said with a smile and took another sip of the wine in the glass. The wine was extremely sweet with a faint fruity taste. It was just like the wine in his memory. It seemed that he had drunk it before, but after tasting it carefully, he knew that he had actually not drunk it before. He himself found it strange that he would actually like to drink this kind of sweet wine, unlike most men who like to drink stronger wine. Why do you mention it again and again? Yuan Qing worries too much. Did you see Great Elder Princess's carriage just now? Chu Luiyue smiled more gently. Of course I saw it. What's the matter with Great Elder Princess? When Wenshichi came over, he only saw the back of Rui and Great Elder Princess's carriage, but he heard various discussions in the crowd, which were related to the 2 misses of Duke Xing's mansion. I heard that the 5th Miss Xiao sprained her ankle. The medicine she used was sent by Duke Xing's mansion. The 1st Miss Xiao and the 5th Miss Xiao each have a bottle, but the bottle used by the 5th Miss Xiao is mixed with other medicine. The bottle used by 5th Miss Xiao is mixed with other medicines. After taking it, not only will she not recover quickly, but her feet may also be rotten. Great Elder Princess was angry and went to Duke Xing's mansion to make a scene. Chu Luiyue said casually. There was the matter of the Baiyun Taoist temple before. Why is there another one now? Does Duke Xing's mansion really dislike the 5th Miss Xiao to such an extent? Wenshichi frowned and said with doubt. Who knows? Chu Luiyue said lightly, but the 5th Miss Xiao is also very noisy. It seems that she has been very noisy since she came to the capital city. What do you mean, Your Highness? Although there was still a smile on Wenshichi's face, his eyes became deeper. I've met the 1st Miss Xiao before. She is a rare gentle beauty with a good family background and an excellent reputation. She shouldn't do such a thing. What's more, my father also wants her to be selected. It's not good for her to spread such words at this time. Chu Luiyue said casually as if he was chatting. His purpose of coming here today was naturally to see Wenshichi, and he did want to talk about the matter of the Baiyun Taoist temple. The matter of Rui and Great Elder Princess just now made it easier for him to talk about this matter. Your Highness, do you want to choose her as your princess? Wenshichi's heart moved, but his face showed no emotion. I think so, but now. Chu Luiyue said with a melancholy face, my father will not allow a girl with a bad reputation to be my princess, but I. Speaking of this, Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment, seeming to be a little embarrassed. He picked up the wine cup in his hand, drank it up, and then put it down heavily. He looked at Wenshichi very sincerely and said, a gentleman is fond of a fair and graceful girl, and I can't be an exception. If the 1st Miss Xiao can be my princess, I will be very happy. Your Highness, if it were the 1st Miss Xiao in the past, it would not be a problem for her to be selected. At that time, you can report it to the Emperor, but now. Wenshichi coughed in a low voice and said, I'm afraid it is not easy to deal with this matter. So I have to ask Yuan Qing for help. Chu Luiyue's face slightly blushed, showing a young man's admiration, and he said, the 1st Miss Xiao is really the person I admire, and I really don't want others to marry her. I have to marry her to be at peace. Wenshichi lowered his head and was silent for a while, and then slowly nodded and said, since it is your Highness's idea, I will do it. Thank you, Yuan Qing. Chu Luiyue was overjoyed. He stood up and bowed deeply to Wen Shiqi. Wen Shiqi hurriedly stood up to support Chu Luiyue and said, Your Highness, you are too polite. I will never forget your great kindness to the Wen's mansion. Yuan Qing, it's just a piece of cake. It's nothing. Chu Luiyue waved his hand and said indifferently. It's just a piece of cake for your highness, but for me, it's the life-saving grace of the whole family. Wen Shiqi said with a serious face. Chu Luiyue had done the Wen's mansion a favor, and in fact, it was the Prime Minister who had done the Wen's mansion a favor. A few years ago, the Prime Minister was involved in a corruption case, and all the suspicious points pointed to the Wen's mansion. The Emperor was furious and wanted to confiscate the Wen's mansion. It was Chu Luiyue who took the lead to kneel in the imperial study to plead for the Prime Minister, which delayed the matter a little. Later, he helped to investigate the matter and even made efforts in it again and again. Speaking of this matter, the Prime Minister had always been grateful to Chu Luiyue and asked the whole mansion to pay attention to the matter of Prince Yu. But after this matter, Chu Luiyue and the Prime Minister's mansion were not very close. They just met and greeted each other in the imperial court. It was said that when the emperor later asked about this matter, he only said that he had a good relationship with the third young master Wen since childhood. He knew that the prime minister would not do such a thing, so he intervened in this matter in case the loyal minister was framed. Since this matter had been settled, the rest had nothing to do with him. He mainly did it for the sake of the third young master Wen. At that time, the third young master Wen was just an idle scholar. Although he had always been famous for his talent, he was not an official. Moreover, he was young at that time, and Chu Luiyue and the third young master Wen had a good relationship, so no one used this matter to attack Chu Luiyue for forming a clique for personal gain. But no matter how long this matter had passed, the whole prime minister's mansion had always been grateful to Chu Luiyue. Even though the two families did not have close contact after that, this matter was deeply imprinted in the hearts of the whole prime minister's mansion. Then they talked about some idle things. Then a guard came to report that the emperor asked Chu Luiyue to enter the palace, so Chu Luiyue had to leave, leaving Wen Shiqi alone in the private room. Wen Shiqi picked up the wine at hand and carefully tasted it. He lowered his eyes, and the joy and anger in his eyes could not be seen clearly. He just quietly looked at the empty wine cup in his hand. A fair and graceful lady is a gentleman's dream. There was a very faint smile on his lips, very cold and very thin. Chapter 596. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign /say net. This is a wonderful free reading without a pop-up window. Xiao Yanru went down the mountain in a hurry that day. After going down the mountain, she didn't rush back to the mansion. Instead, she went directly to a place and asked someone to invite Chu Luiyue. When Chu Luiyue entered the room, he smelled of alcohol. Obviously, he had been drinking before. Prince. Hearing the sound of Chu Luiyue entering the door, Xiao Yanru stood up with red eyes. It was obvious that she had cried just now. What happened? Seeing the tearful and helpless look of the beauty, Chu Luiyue, who was originally full of anger, softened a little at this time. Your Highness, I really don't know why this happened. Xiao Yanru said aggrievedly. She wiped the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief, but her eyes turned red. Why are there 2 different bottles of ointment, and one of them is mixed with something else? Chu Luiyue said unhappily, how could you make such a mistake at this time? I don't know. She and I were both injured. At that time, we went down the mountain to get 2 bottles of ointment from the mansion. I didn't expect it to be like this, Xiao Yanru said, looking flustered and confused. Chu Luiyue turned to look at Shuqi, who was standing beside Xiao Yanru. Shuqi hurriedly knelt down and said, when I went to the mansion to get it that day, Nanny Yu, who served old madam, told me which bottle belonged to the first miss and which one belonged to the 5th Mississippi. It really had nothing to do with the 1st Mississippi. Any other instructions? Chu Luiyue asked coldly. That's what I was told. Shuqi nodded repeatedly. Since the 2 bottles of ointment are different, why don't you ask? Chu Luiyue turned to Xiao Yanru and asked with displeasure. I thought my ointment was better than hers. You know, Grandma doesn't like her, so it's normal for her to be partial to me. Of course, I listened to Grandma. How could I deliberately ruin Grandma's plan? But I didn't expect that there was something else in the ointment. Xiao Yanru felt wronged and wiped away her tears. She bit her lips so hard that they turned red. Her big eyes seemed to be soaked with water, which was so beautiful that it made people feel sorry for her. Chu Luiyue calmed down and comforted her softly. Well, next time you encounter this kind of thing, be more careful. Don't make any more trouble. Just now, Great Elder Princess was furious and had smashed a lot of things in your mansion. How could this be? We are Duke Xing's mansion. Xiao Yanru was shocked and said in disbelief with red eyes. So what? Fifth Miss Xiao is Great Elder Duke's biological granddaughter. Besides, it's indeed your mansion's fault. I heard that Imperial Physician Chu helped to verify it. It can be seen that it's true. After returning to the mansion, you should persuade old madam not to make trouble for no reason. Otherwise, the reputation of your Duke Xing's mansion will be ruined. Xiao Yu Chu to Yanru and said. She was. Xiao. Xiao time, he Xiao Yan Chu, and said. I know. I will tell her when I go back, but what should we do now? Fifth sister will not let it go. Great Elder Princess knows it because she sent someone here to stir up this matter. There was the matter of the Baiyun Taoist temple before, and now there is this matter. I'm afraid that fifth sister will not let the whole Duke Xing's mansion have an easy time. Xiao Yanru said sadly. Hearing that Xiao Wanru would not let the whole Duke Xing's mansion have an easy time, and looking at Xiao Yanru's tearful face, Chu Luiyue increasingly felt that he had done the right thing before. This fifth Miss Xiao was really an unpleasant troublemaker. Don't worry, I will help you secretly. You go back and ask old madam to find someone to take the blame. Don't get other aristocratic families involved. Even if other aristocratic families are no longer prosperous, they may have hidden cards. Maybe it will be a situation where both sides suffer. I know. I will listen to your words, Your Highness. Xiao Yanru knew that Chu Luiyue was referring to the matter involving Duke Yong's mansion before, so she hurriedly promised him obediently. Seeing that she was so gentle, Chu Luiyue's face became a little better. He sat down in a chair beside him, held the teacup given by Xiao Qizi in his hand, and asked after thinking for a while, what's your relationship with Chiu Yu and Chu Qing? What? Xiao Wanru didn't understand what Chu Luiyue said at the moment. After being stunned for a moment, she asked with a little uneasiness. I heard that Chiu Yu and Chu Qing are now in the Yuhui nunnery and have contact with you. How is your relationship with them? Chu Luiyue looked up at Xiao Yanru and asked casually. Xiao Yanru's heart unconsciously tightened. She hurriedly shook her head and said, Your Highness, although I know Lord Chiu and Commandery Prince Qing, I just know them and have no contact with them. It was not difficult for Chu Luiyue to find out that she went to the maple leaf forest with Chiu Yu and Chu Qing. Xiao Wanru was smart and didn't intend to hide it. She immediately told him what had happened in the maple leaf forest. Chu Qing met them by chance, and Chiu Yu was invited here because of Xiao Wanru's matter. Later, because Xiao Wanru hurt her foot, the three of them strolled around for a while, but later they immediately came to accompany Xiao Wanru. Most of these things were true. She only concealed a little about her interaction with Chiu Yu and Chu Qing, but the key part made the whole meaning of the whole story completely different. Chu Luiyue looked satisfied. He nodded at once and stopped asking. He only asked her to be careful after returning to the mansion and then sent someone to send her out. After getting into her carriage, Xiao Yanru's carriage didn't go anywhere else this time but went directly to Duke Xing's mansion. As soon as she entered the mansion and got off the carriage, she saw her mother standing in front of the carriage excitedly. Seeing her get off, she rushed over and said with concern, what's wrong? Mother, don't worry. I'm fine. How is Grandma? Xiao Yanru said with a smile. Your grandma was so angry that she almost fainted. She just took the medicine and fell asleep. Why are you so careless? Didn't you say that your foot was not hurt? Why is it so serious? Madame of Duke Xing took Xiao Yanru's hand and complained in a low voice. The biggest mistake in this matter was that Xiao Yanru thought that Xiao Wanru was not hurt, so she asked an imperial physician to treat her. If it were an ordinary doctor instead of an imperial physician, it would be easier to explain. She could even secretly threaten the doctor to change his words and say something else that could help Duke Xing's mansion prove its innocence. But now it was ruined by imperial physician Chu, who was invited by Duke Xing. She felt like lifting a brick and dropping it on her own feet. Mother, check the people around Grandma to see who can use the ointment. Xiao Yanru had thought of a countermeasure on the way and said calmly. Who do you think it is? Madame of Duke Xing also knew. She looked around and asked in a low voice. Several maids and old maids followed a few steps away from them, neither too far nor too close. They could see them but not hear their words. They didn't see anyone else along the way. Just now, Rui and Great Elder Princess rushed in and smashed things, which scared all the servants in the mansion. Since he can get the key to Grandma's private warehouse, he should be Grandma's henchman. Xiao Yanru hinted. Nanny you? Madame of Duke Xing rolled her eyes. No, Grandma won't agree. But you can mention Nanny you first and then Shui Yan. In this way, Grandma will let her go. Xiao Yanru said. If she mentioned Shui Yan first, Grandma would probably feel sorry for her. But if she mentioned Nanny you first and then Shui Yan, she believed Grandma would give up Shui Yan. Mention Shui Yan? But Shui Yan is. Madame of Duke Xing's face darkened and she said in embarrassment. Shui Yan was the principal maid of old Madame. Except for Nanny Yu, Shui Yan was the most capable person by old Madame's side. In the past, Shui Yan often showed kindness to Madame of Duke Xing. Although she was not Madame of Duke Xing's servant, she was the one who showed kindness to Madame of Duke Xing. Madame of Duke Xing was reluctant to punish her. Mother, you can't bear to let go of Shui Yan now. Do you want to make this matter unclear? If something unclear happens in our mansion, the whole Duke Xing's mansion will be implicated. At that time, how can I marry into the royal family smoothly? Xiao Yanru felt aggrieved and looked at Madame of Duke Xing with red eyes. Madame of Duke Xing didn't bear to let go of Shui Yan because of kindness. Seeing Xiao Yanru's expression at this time, she nodded at once, stamped her feet hard and said, Okay, let's choose Shui Yan. A servant's life was never more important than her daughter's reputation. The matter that Rui and Great Elder Princess brought people to smash Duke Xing's mansion aggressively once again pushed Duke Xing's mansion into the limelight. First, it was the matter of the Baiyun Taoist temple, and then it was the matter of the ointment. Later, it was said that a principal maid of old Madame was vicious. Because 5th Miss Xiao had slapped her in the mansion, she bore a grudge and mixed other powder into the ointment. Of course, this maid was sold after being beaten 20 times. However, a little servant girl dared to mix other things into the ointment used by 5th Miss Xiao, which also showed that 5th Miss Xiao was really not valued by Duke Xing's mansion. After being recognized, Duke Xing's mansion once said that even her courtyard had been burned, forcing 5th Miss Xiao to live in the Yuhui nunnery. There were all kinds of rumors that Duke Xing's mansion treated 5th Miss Xiao harshly and even intended to drive 5th Miss Xiao out of Duke Xing's mansion. As for the reason, it was said that it was for the title of nobility of Duke Xing's mansion. Because the two children of the first branch of Duke Xing's mansion stood in the way of the second branch, they hurt 5th Miss Xiao. This rumor was said to be based on many things. As for the reason why Duke Xing's mansion didn't deal with Xiao Yuanhao, it was because he was now in Rui and Great Elder Princess's residence, and Duke Xing's mansion didn't dare to do anything to him. Because of what had happened recently and what had happened in the past, these rumors became more and more popular and convincing. Some officials even began to collect information in this regard and prepared to submit a memorial to Duke Xing. But at this time, another rumor came out, which broke the good situation created by Xiao Wanru's victory. Chapter 597. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign small/say net. This is a wonderful free reading without a pop-up window. Miss, it is said that you are the source of the disaster. When you were in Qin's mansion, you made the whole mansion restless. The original general's madam is now grounded in the backyard, and no one knows whether she is alive or not. First, Mrs. reputation has been ruined. Later, when you recognized Duke Xing's mansion, you made Duke Xing's mansion restless and made Rui, and great elder princess and Duke Xing's mansion hostile. Yu Jie came in angrily and reported. This was the news she had inquired from Nanny Dong after going down the mountain today. Xiao Wanru blinked her eyes and said, someone is secretly pushing people to fight against the previous rumors. With this rumor, does it mean that people don't talk about the other people of Duke Xing's mansion so enthusiastically? Yes, a lot of people are talking about you now. They are guessing whether you are really a jinx or not. Whoever is associated with you will be in trouble. The more Yu Jie spoke, the angrier she got. A jinx? Xiao Wanru walked to the window and looked coldly at the sleeping water lily in the vat. This news could really exonerate Duke Xing's mansion and Xiao Yanru. Xiao Yanru must have played a role in it. It seemed that the opponent, who could spread a rumor so vigorously and cleverly, was very difficult to deal with. She couldn't even guess who was so malicious to her. Since she came to the capital city, she had only been in touch with a few families. Only those who were related to Duke Xing's mansion could help Duke Xing's mansion at this time, but there were not many people who had the ability to do so. Miss, do you want to ask the prince for help? Yu Jie also saw the fish tank outside the window. After thinking for a while, she asked tentatively. Bane. Xiao Wanru raised the corners of her mouth and looked at the blooming water lilies with a gloomy look in her eyes. She didn't know who was secretly doing this, but she knew that if she was called a bane, she would be completely ruined. Not only would it bring disaster to the country, it would also bring disaster to the country. Those in power were most afraid of this so-called jinx. If there was a jinx, how could they survive? This didn't mean that the position of the person in power was unstable, and it might even cause people to doubt the rationality of their position. It was said that the throne belonged to Chu Luchen, and it was the emperor who robbed his nephew of the throne. Now it was said that this was a jinx, which made the rumor even more true. This move was clearly to put him in a dead end. Miss, what do we do now? Yu Jie said anxiously. Madame Dong had also asked her to report this matter as soon as possible so that Xiao Wanru could come up with a solution as soon as possible. Otherwise, there would be a big disaster, and even Rui, and great elder princess, could not protect her. Xiao Wanru bit her lip and her lips turned pale. She had a deep sense of powerlessness. Even if she had been reborn, she was just a woman in the backyard. The cruel means of the imperial court were definitely not done by a woman. To strike quickly, it was a one-hit kill. This reminded her of the day when she was cut in half at the waist. The twisted and indistinct meaning left behind was so painful and powerless. Everything around her seemed to be twisting so much that she could only see the color of blood. There was also a large blurry scene that she couldn't see clearly, which seemed to be the corpses of beautiful women. Blood dripped down from the high steps, making her unable to determine whether what she was seeing was real or an illusion. Miss. Yu Jie's panicked voice came into her ears. Her fingers were a little spasmodically touching a place that could support her. The bottom of her hand was cold, which stimulated the madness in her heart. She slowly opened her blood-red eyes and saw a few water lilies in front of her. Although there were not many of them, among the duckweed and water, the colorful lotuses were swaying with vitality. There was no blood-red stare, nor was there his own body that was twisted in pain. She narrowed her eyes, suppressed the fishy feeling in her heart, and felt that the blood in her body was flowing slowly again. The madness at this moment seemed to be just an illusion of hers. Miss, what's wrong with you? Yu Jie reached out to support her, and her face changed dramatically. At that moment, she saw Xiao Wanru's body tighten and her eyes close, and she was about to fall. Fortunately, she reacted quickly and reached out to support her. "Miss, I have something to report to you." Another steady voice came, which made Xiao Wanru's agitated heart slowly calm down. He took a deep breath, lowered his head, and looked at the jade paperweight on the table that he was tightly gripping. It was a jade paperweight that was fixed to the table. "I'm fine. Let Qing come in," she said in a low voice. She tried to calm down and heard clearly that it was Qing's voice outside. "Yes, Mississippi." Yujie carefully let go of her hand. Seeing that she stood there steadily, she breathed a sigh of relief, turned to the door, and let Qing come in. Since Xiao Yanru left, the whole yard was full of people, so it was much more convenient for them to get along. It was also much more convenient for Qing, who pretended to be a rough servant girl, to do things. Qing came in and bowed to Xiao Wanru. "What's the matter?" Xiao Wanru asked, still looking at the jade paperweight. This jade paperweight was given by Chu Luchen. In order to prevent her from breaking it, he specially made a shelf to fix the jade paperweight on the table. Xiao Wanru had accidentally broken several jade paperweights before. "Master, please rest assured." Master said that it would be fine. Qing said. Xiao Wanru clenched the jade paperweight in her hand tightly, as if it could give her strength. The clear jade with a slight coolness made her regain consciousness little by little. She slowly rolled her eyes and asked, "Did your master say anything else?" "He didn't say anything else. He just asked you to cultivate in peace on the mountain." Qing stole a glance at Xiao Wanru's face. Seeing that Xiao Wanru looked better, she breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. With her sharp ears, she certainly heard Yujie's scream in the room clearly just now. She even saw Xiao Wanru's pale face and red eyes. She immediately knew that something was wrong, so she came in to report to Xiao Wanru. She had just received the news from the foot of the mountain. Originally, she wanted to wait for Yujie to finish her report. But when she saw Xiao Wanru's look, she knew that something was wrong, so she rushed in a hurry. Seeing that Xiao Wanru had calmed down again, she breathed a sigh of relief. Her master had made it clear that she would protect the fifth Miss well. If something really happened, she wouldn't be able to kill her even if she had 10 heads. Seeing that Xiao Wanru's face had improved and her expression had become lively, she secretly wiped away a cold sweat. If she had known it earlier, she would have reported it to Yujie first. "You can leave now." "I got it." Xiao Wanru nodded and looked up at the water lilies outside the window. Her heart, which had been cold and mad just now, inexplicably became calm because of these words. It was very quiet in the imperial study. The emperor put down the memorial in his hand and picked up another one. When he saw what was written on it clearly, he was so angry that he directly threw the memorial in his hand out and said with a sneer, "Bane? They really dare to report it to the emperor. Find out where these rumors come from and who is the Bane." "Yes, your majesty. I'll send someone to investigate it now." Durong carefully bent down to pick up the memorial from the ground and said, "Send the eldest son and the second son." The emperor paused for a moment and his face softened a little. "Send the third son and the fourth son here. I'd like to see whose hand it is." He put down a memorial casually, opened it and found that it was another one. He angrily put it aside, took it again, and put it down again. His face became more and more ugly. "Yes, your majesty, please wait a moment. I'll go now." Durong lowered his head and did not dare to look at the emperor's angry face. He obeyed the order and retreated to the door of the imperial study. He sent a guard and a few eunuchs in and asked them to go out separately. Prince Zhou came the fastest. He was originally in the palace. The second one to come was Prince Yu, Chu Liuzhou, and the third one was Chu Liuxin. He had spent a lot of effort to find someone under a stage. Chu Luchen was the last to come. He was pushed in a wheelchair. It was not that he was sick again. It was really that he walked very slowly with his weak body. It was faster to push the wheelchair. As soon as Xiao Xuanzi pushed Chu Luchen into the door, he saw the three princes kneeling on the ground in front of them. There was a broken cup in front of them. He hurriedly pushed Chu Luchen into the door and then carefully retreated behind Chu Luchen. He pretended to be dead like the other palace servants in the room. "Greetings, uncle." Chu Luchen raised his eyes, looked at his brothers kneeling on the ground, and then looked at the emperor, who was so angry that his blue veins were bulging, and said gently. Xiao Xuanzi hurriedly reached out to help him. Chu Luchen stood up from the wheelchair and was about to kneel down to greet the emperor. "You don't have to do that. Just sit down first." Seeing Chu Luchen's behavior, the emperor's face softened a little and he waved his hand. Chu Luchen didn't refuse. He sat down again with Xiao Xuanzi's hand, and Xiao Xuanzi stood behind him obediently. "Uncle, this is..." Chu Luchen looked at the three people kneeling on the ground and then looked at the emperor sitting above. There was a little confusion on his face, and he looked very worried. "Look, you are all my good sons. I am fine now, but you can't wait anymore, can't you?" "Bane? What bane? If I find out who is related to this matter..." The emperor's expression was cold. He picked up a few memorials at hand and threw them in their faces. "It's just a rumor in the marketplace, and the few of you can't wait to jump up and down. It seems that all of you are quite free, but you actually care so much about a rumor in the marketplace, especially a rumor in the backyard. The courtiers in the imperial court don't care about political affairs, and only care about the affairs of a few women in the backyard." Speaking of this, the emperor was so angry that he threw other memorials on his sons' heads. "Father, I don't know what happened. I'm wronged." Prince Zhou opened a memorial that had been smashed on his face. Ignoring the pain in his nose, he hurriedly defended himself loudly. "Father, I don't know what happened either. I was in the Ministry of Works just now to see the next official affairs to be repaired, so I don't know what happened to the courtiers," Chu Luiyue said with a respectful face. Although he looked calm, his eyes were slightly red, as if he had been wronged but tried to calm down. "Father, I was watching the show. I was just there to check the situation of the people. I really don't know what it has to do with me." The youngest, Chu Liuxin, even cried out that he had been wronged. He really felt wronged. He had also heard the rumors outside. He went out today to find out where the rumors came from, and he found the theater. Before he found out, the emperor called him back and scolded him. Until now, Chu Liuxin felt very dizzy. He didn't know what he had done wrong and what the memorials of the courtiers had to do with him. Chapter 598. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign small/say net. There was no pop-up window to read for free. You're good at investigating the people's situation. You even went to the theater. The emperor said coldly. "Father, I'm telling the truth. If you don't believe me, you can check it out. I really think that the rumors outside are a little strange. She's just a weak girl who was forced to live in the Yuhui nunnery. At first glance, it's obvious that she was framed. Her fate is pitiful, but there are so many rumors. I don't think it's right." Chu Liuxin plucked up his courage and said loudly with an angry look on his face. "Fourth brother, don't say too much and make me angry." Chu Luiyue reprimanded him in a low voice. "I am." Chu Liuxin, who had always listened to Chu Luiyue, was not so easy to appease this time. He said unconvincingly. Chu Luiyue fiercely pulled his sleeve and glared at him, signaling him to shut up. "Father, I'm wrong. If I want to investigate anything in the future, I will definitely report it to you first. I will never go beyond my authority." Chu Liuxin admitted his mistake reluctantly. 2 eunuchs hurried in to report. Durong stopped them at the door. When he heard their report, he could only come in with a bitter face to report to the emperor. This kind of thing was actually a big deal, but since the 2 eunuchs said so, he could only report it in this way. "Your Majesty, a group of koi fish in the imperial flower garden are all dead. They say, they are scourges, Your Majesty, some Tang Qianyan in full bloom in the greenhouse are dead. They say, they are scourges." Before Durong could finish his words, he was hit on the head. With a thud, he hurriedly knelt down and said, "Your Majesty, I know it's nonsense, but the palace is also talking about it now. If something happens, it will be reported to them." Durong also hated it. The emperor was in a very bad mood at this time. It was obviously because of the rumors about the scourges. These people were so confused that they still came to report the scourges. It was obvious that they didn't manage their own affairs well. After something happened, they casually pushed the blame to the scourges. They were just shirking their responsibility. Unexpectedly, the emperor was even angrier. "Flog those 2 servants 50 times. The emperor was furious. After 50 strikes of the cane, he would definitely lose his life. Moreover, the laws and techniques of the palace were naturally more powerful than those of the palace. Yes. Durong didn't dare to plead for mercy. He got up and bowed as he retreated. "Uncle, please wait." The elegant and noble voice seemed very abrupt in this imperial study, but it was also very gentle, as if it immediately dissolved the heavy hostility in the entire study. "What does Prince Chen want to say?" Seeing that it was Chu Luchen who spoke, the emperor calmed down a little. Although there was still no smile on his face, his voice became gentle. "Uncle, after 50 strikes, these 2 servants must be dead. Uncle, you'd better not hit them so many times and keep them alive for interrogation. Maybe you'll know why there are rumors in the palace." In the past, no matter how powerful the rumors outside were, they couldn't affect the palace. Could it be because? Chu Luchen frowned tightly. Although his voice was gentle, his expression was a little gloomy. Speaking of this, he didn't continue. He slowly lowered his head and stopped talking. "Father, maybe someone in the palace also spread the rumor. Someone must have done it secretly. Please find out the matter and seek justice for Mother." Prince Zhou couldn't bear it anymore. He kowtowed to the emperor and said loudly. It was the empress who was in charge of the imperial harem. Now the rumors were everywhere, and this matter would inevitably fall on the empress. Originally, Prince Zhou wanted to watch the fun, but at this time, he couldn't help jumping out to defend his mother. He glanced fiercely at his brothers. He wanted to see who did this kind of thing. Finally, his eyes fell on Chu Luiyue. He still felt that Chu Luiyue was most likely to do this. It was obvious that he wanted to harm him, the legitimate son of the empress, and start with his mother. If his mother was harmed, his identity as the legitimate son would not exist. Chu Luiyue had the eldest son. If he was not the legitimate son, he would definitely be no match for him. Ask the empress to clean up the imperial harem. If there are any unwarranted rumors, punish them directly. Send the 2 servants just now to the empress's palace and let her investigate them together. Let's see who else is spreading such rumors in the palace." The emperor said coldly. "Yes, I'll ask someone to report it to the empress right now." Durong answered and left. "She is just a little girl in the imperial harem, and she is your cousin. She just can't get along with Duke Xing's mansion. How dare you say that she is a bane? If she is a bane and you are her cousin, will you also bring disaster to her?" The emperor sneered and looked at his sons kneeling below. It happened so suddenly that they hadn't found out the truth yet. But it was obvious that they had been framed. In the eyes of the emperor, the matter of Duke Xing's mansion was a dispute in the imperial harem, which was really not a big deal. Even though Rui, and Great Elder Princess had complained to him several times, the emperor only politely asked Great Elder Princess to go to the Empress Dowager or the Empress to deal with this matter. This kind of thing was not a big deal in the emperor's eyes, but if this kind of thing was so serious, there must be someone behind it. Thinking that Xiao Wanru had a hidden identity, which was to marry Chu Luchen, the emperor couldn't suppress his anger. It was obvious that someone was going to deal with Chu Luchen. Why did they say that she was a bane? If she was really a bane, would Chen Er's health get better and better? Others didn't know, but the emperor was well aware of it. As early as when Chu Luchun was going to marry Xiao Wanru, he had asked the imperial astronomer to calculate their fates. They all said that they were a match made in heaven, and that it was also very good for Chu Luchun's health if they got engaged. The current imperial astronomer was trusted by the emperor. How could he think that Xiao Wanru was a bane because of these sudden rumors? In addition, Chu Luchun's health was indeed better than before, so the emperor was even more sure that Xiao Wanru was a lucky star. From a lucky star to a bane, it was obvious that someone didn't want to see Chu Luchun doing well. Just now, Chu Luchun obviously realized this, so he looked so sad. As long as he thought of this, the emperor was furious. I don't dare. I don't dare. Hearing the emperor's words, the three princes lowered their heads one by one and repeatedly said that they didn't dare. They couldn't help sweating on their foreheads. Chu Luchun didn't say anything and continued to lower his head, but his face became increasingly gloomy. After a long while, he raised his head and said gently, "Uncle, don't be angry. Let's check it out first. Investigate, also investigate the rumors outside. Tell the capital magistrate to send people to all the theaters and bookstores to find all the suspicious people." The emperor took a deep breath, angrily glared at his three sons, and loudly said, coming out of the imperial study. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and glanced at the hall outside the imperial study. He only felt suffocated. Originally, he thought it was just a little girl's matter, but he didn't expect it to be so serious. He just wanted to help Xiao Yenru out of trouble, but he didn't expect that there were so many people who followed him. Someone must know that it had something to do with him and deliberately promoted it in secret. Big brother, who do you think would do this to kill a girl in boudoir? Prince Zhou followed him out with a gloomy face. Looking at his face, he said with a bit of sarcasm, "The flowers and fish in the palace died, and it's all the fault of this bane. How could someone think of this kind of thing? Is he out of his mind?" Big brother, second brother, I also think that the person who thought of this idea is out of his mind. Fifth Miss Xiao is such a good person, but she was harmed to such a degree. I think it was done by the people of Duke Xing's mansion. It was clearly said that the people of Duke Xing's mansion were harming Fifth Mississippi. Chu Liuxin also followed them and said angrily after hearing their words. He was really angry. Fifth Miss Xiao was such a beautiful person, but how could she be spread like this? The most important thing was that he had thought about finding an opportunity to talk to his mother about Fifth Miss Xiao. If his mother agreed, he could go to his father to ask for a marriage. He didn't expect that such a thing would happen. Now that the matter had not been settled, he didn't dare to say such a thing. His mother always believed in Buddhism. If she knew a little of the rumors about this bane, it would be impossible for her to marry him. As long as he thought of this, Chu Liuxin was so angry that he wanted to strangle the person who spread such rumors to death. Who was so disgusting and talked nonsense? Fourth brother, don't talk nonsense. Chu Luiyue looked at him coldly and said in a low voice. What's wrong with me? It must be them. They said that they were going to send Fifth Miss Xiao to Baiyun Taoist Temple. Later, they said that First Miss Xiao sent a poisonous ointment to Fifth Miss Xiao. All of these things have something to do with Duke Xing's mansion. Then suddenly, the rumor that Fifth Miss Xiao is a bane appeared. Who else could it be but Duke Xing's mansion? Chu Liuxin stomped his feet and said. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Did someone know what he meant and deliberately wanted to ruin his plan? But no one else knew that he liked Xiao Wanru, except that he followed her to Duke Xing's mansion that day. Or did the people of Duke Xing's mansion see something? Thinking of this, he became more and more convinced. Fourth brother, be careful with your words. If my father hears it, he will definitely punish you. How can you talk about the important officials in the court at will? Prince Zhou also advised in a cold voice and squinted at Prince Xian. Prince Zhou really didn't take Prince Xian, who was a little too childish, seriously. Hey, what do you mean by speaking up for Duke Xing's mansion? Chu Liuxin was full of anger at this time. Hearing the two of them scolding him, he was so angry that he blurted out. After that, he didn't look at their ugly faces, stamped his feet angrily, turned around and strode away. Chu Luiyue frowned, but his expression remained unchanged. Fourth brother, you are still so childish. How can this kind of thing be as simple as it looks on the surface? Brother, you also know that it is not simple. I don't know who set up such a trap to deal with a weak daughter. How promising. Chu Liuzhou sneered and was not in the mood to show respect to Chu Luiyue. He turned in the direction of the Empress's palace. He thought that it was probably done by Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue frowned more and more, and then his eyes fell on Chu Luchen, who was the last to come out. The wheelchair was skillfully carried out by 2 guards at the door. After it was put down, Xiao Xuanzi pushed it over from behind. Third brother, you're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.